This is a compilation of over 3 hours of Mortal Kombat character lore explained. So sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn. Let's kick things off with every resurrected MK character explained. Mortal Kombat has killed off its roster more times than most franchises have characters. But here's what nobody talks about. Almost none of them stayed dead. From Hellfire Specters to zombie champions, death in this franchise is less of an ending and more of a career change. So today, we're breaking down every resurrected character in Mortal Kombat and what happened to them, starting with the one who made coming back from the dead, Scorpion, the Hellspawn Spectre. Hanzo Hasashi's entire existence is built on a lie. That's not an exaggeration. That's literally the plot. Before the spear, before get over here, he was a father, a husband, leader of the Shirai Ryu clan. Then Bi-Han, the original Sub-Zero, slaughtered every single member of his clan and killed Hanzo last so he could watch, which is, you know, not ideal. But here's the thing. Bi-Han didn't decide to do this on his own. Quan Chi, a Netherrealm sorcerer with zero moral compass, secretly ordered the massacre. Then, he dragged Hanzo's soul to the Netherrealm and resurrected him as a Hellfire Spectre fueled entirely by rage. Teleportation, Hellfire projection, near immortality. The guy was dissolved in acid during Deadly Alliance and just came back anyway. Acid didn't matter. And the whole time, Quan Chi whispered the same thing. Sub-Zero did this to you. Kill him. So Scorpion spent over 30 years of franchise history hunting a man based on a completely fabricated grudge, manipulated by the same sorcerer who destroyed his life. That's not a villain. That's a puppet who doesn't know he has strings. But at least Scorpion got to keep his identity. The next guy on this list, he lost everything, including his name. Bi-Han was the original Sub-Zero. And if you're confused, no, that's not the Sub-Zero you're probably thinking of. That's his younger brother, Kuai Liang, who took the name after Bi-Han got a kunai through the skull courtesy of Scorpion during the first tournament, which is, you know, not ideal. But death wasn't the end for Bi-Han. It was a renovation. Quan Chi dragged his soul to the Netherrealm and stripped away every trace of his humanity. No memories, no loyalty, no conscience, just darkness wearing a human shape. The result was Noob Saibot, a shadow wraith with powers Bi-Han never had in life. Invisibility, shadow weapon constructs, and a literal clone made of pure darkness. None of that was in the original Sub-Zero toolkit. Quan Chi didn't just bring him back, he upgraded him into something worse. Here's the thing. The lore explains why Bi-Han was so easy to corrupt. Years of killing for the Lin Kuei had already compromised his soul before Scorpion ever touched him. By the time Quan Chi got hold of him, Bi-Han was basically already halfway through the door. All Quan Chi had to do was push. And the wildest part? Players were fighting as this resurrected corpse for years without knowing it. Noob Saibot was smuggled into Mortal Kombat 2 in 1993 as a hidden fight nobody was supposed to find easily. He didn't become fully playable until Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 in 1995. Fans played as him, fought against him, and had zero idea they were controlling the corrupted husk of the original Sub-Zero. The twist had been sitting right in front of everyone's face the entire time. But if you think Bi-Han's soul getting strip-mined is disturbing, wait until you hear about the guy who's been collecting souls like baseball cards since the first tournament. Here's the thing about Shang Tsung. The guy built his entire identity around stealing souls. Thousands of them. He could rip the life force out of a warrior mid-fight, absorb their memories, their techniques, even their face. Walking, talking identity theft with a ponytail. And yet, when it came time for him to actually die, he couldn't do a single thing about it. The most powerful soul sorcerer in Mortal Kombat history, a man who literally eats people's essence for breakfast, could not resurrect himself. His whole deal started with a bargain. He sold his soul to Shao Kahn in exchange for the ability to steal others. Immortality, shape-shifting, the full package. But there was a catch, because there's always a catch. Shang Tsung needs to consume souls constantly just to keep his body from falling apart. Thousands annually, so when he hosts Mortal Kombat tournaments, that's not ambition, that's grocery shopping. After Liu Kang beat him in the first tournament, Shang Tsung didn't explode into confetti. He just got weaker, like a phone on 3% battery that refuses to die. And when he needed to come back, he had to wait for Quan Chi to drag him out of whatever hole he'd crawled into. The Deadly Alliance was literally Quan Chi going, "Hey, I need help murdering our boss. You in?" And Shang Tsung said yes like a guy who just got offered a ride home from the airport. The shape-shifting is genuinely terrifying though. Every soul he absorbs gives him full access to that person's fighting style, memories, personality. But none of that power, not a single stolen soul across centuries of harvesting, could save him when it mattered. But if you think a sorcerer who can't save himself is pathetic, wait until you hear what they did to Earthrealm's greatest champion after he won. Yu Kang was Earthrealm's greatest champion. 3 tournament victories, the one guy Shao Kahn couldn't break, and then Midway killed him off-screen in a cutscene. In Deadly Alliance, Shang Tsung and Quan Chi team up and just end him. No epic final battle, no last stand, no dramatic sacrifice. Earthrealm's hero gets taken out before the player even picks up a controller. The franchise's most important fighter, removed from the board by 2 sorcerers who decided that jumping him was easier than fighting fair. But here's where it gets dark. Raiden, the god who spent 3 games protecting Liu Kang, who literally mentored this man through the apocalypse, decided the best use of his dead champion was to reanimate him as a zombie and point him at enemy armies. No funeral, no mourning period, just necromancy and a to-do list. And Raiden's little science project didn't exactly follow orders cleanly. Zombie Liu Kang went on to slaughter innocent Shaolin monks, his own brothers, the people he'd spent his entire life training alongside. The God of Thunder turned Earthrealm's greatest protector into Earthrealm's greatest threat, and then presumably shrugged about it. His soul stayed trapped in that state for over a decade, from Deception in 2004 all the way through Mortal Kombat X in 2015. Liu Kang existed as a rotting puppet with no autonomy, no peace, no resolution. It took Quan Chi getting killed to accidentally break the spell. Nobody even freed him on purpose. Then MK11 came along and erased the whole thing. Timeline reset. Liu Kang ascends as Fire God, gets a happy ending, and his entire zombie era becomes simultaneously canonical and not, depending on which version of events you care about. Over a decade of suffering, handwaved by time travel, which is, you know, not ideal, but at least Liu Kang eventually got out. Jax Briggs wasn't so lucky when the Netherrealm came calling. Jax Briggs is a decorated military officer, a career soldier, and one of the toughest fighters Earthrealm has ever produced. Sindel killed him in about 4 seconds. During her rampage through Earthrealm's defenders, Sindel stabbed Jax in the neck with her heel like it was nothing. No epic showdown, no last stand, no final words. Just dead. One of the most beloved characters in the franchise, a guy who'd survived having both arms ripped off by Ermac earlier in the timeline. Gone before he could throw a single punch, which is, you know, not ideal. But dying wasn't the worst part. Quan Chi resurrected him as a revenant, a soul bound through dark sorcery to serve the person who raised it. And here's where it gets genuinely uncomfortable. Unlike specters like Scorpion, who are driven by a singular burning purpose, revenants retain some degree of awareness. They're not fully gone. Some part of Jax was still in there, watching himself fight against the people he'd spent his entire career protecting. He couldn't stop it. He couldn't even slow it down. He was a passenger in his own body while Quan Chi drove. And those mechanical arms, the ones he got after Ermac literally tore his real ones off, the arms that represented his refusal to quit, Quan Chi turned them into weapons aimed directly at Earthrealm. His entire recovery arc, every surgery, every calibration, all of it repurposed into a liability. Great, add that to the list. Raiden eventually reversed the spell through divine intervention, pulling Jax's soul back from the Netherrealm and restoring his free will. But the damage was already done, not just to Jax, but to Earthrealm's entire defensive strategy. Because the takeaway here is simple and terrifying. If Jax Briggs, the most disciplined, loyal soldier in Earthrealm's roster, can be flipped into an enemy weapon in minutes, then literally nobody is safe. Every single defender is one bad day away from becoming the threat. But if you think one soldier losing his soul is a problem, wait until an entire kingdom's princess gets the same treatment. Except she decides she likes it. Kitana, the Empress of Hell. Kitana was Edenian royalty, 10,000 years old, trained in combat since birth, and one of the most respected warriors in the entire Mortal Kombat roster. And then her own mother killed, which is, you know, not ideal. During the MK9 storyline, Sindel was resurrected as a corrupted weapon of Shao Kahn and tore through nearly the entire Earthrealm roster in a single rampage. No grand one-on-one duel. Kitana was just one of the casualties. And before her body was even cold, Quan Chi had already claimed her soul. Here's where it gets dark. The resurrection didn't just bring her back, it erased her. The Princess of Edenia, the woman who fought for her realm's freedom, was replaced by something that looked like it crawled out of a nightmare. Corrupted purple skin, blackened armor, hellfire where her fan techniques used to be. Put pre-death katana and revenant katana side by side, you'd think they were two completely different characters. But the visual transformation isn't even the worst part. As a revenant, Katana ruled the Netherrealm alongside Liu Kang in MK11, two former heroes twisted into tyrants. The woman who spent 10,000 years fighting against Outworld's oppression became an Empress of the Dead. That's not just corruption. That's a complete inversion of everything she stood for. Quan Chi didn't just create a soldier. He engineered a scenario where Katana became the mirror image of what she hated most. Every other Revenant lost their identity. Katana lost hers in the most personal way possible, by becoming exactly the kind of ruler she'd fought to overthrow. The timeline reset eventually freed her, but by that point, her Revenant reign had nearly helped tear reality apart. What's interesting is how the community responded. Dark Katana became a fan favorite. The True Empress skin became one of the most sought-after unlockables in Kombat League history. Players weren't just tolerating the corrupted version, they were celebrating her. When your audience falls in love with the monster you created, you did something right. But if the emotional gut punch of a hero becoming a tyrant felt extreme, wait until you see what the Lin Kuei did to one of their own. Sub-Zero, the Cyber Resurrection. Every other resurrection on this list involves magic, dark sorcery, Netherrealm corruption, divine intervention, some flavor of supernatural overreach. Kuai Liang's doesn't, and that's exactly what makes it the most disturbing one here. During Mortal Kombat 9's story, Kuai Liang was beaten, broken, and barely clinging to life when the Lin Kuei captured him. Not an enemy faction, not Outworld invaders, his own clan. Sector personally oversaw the process, strapping a dying cryomancer to a table and grafting cybernetic components directly onto his failing body. The official designation was LK520, which sounds like a refrigerator model number, because that's basically what they turned him into. But here's where it gets genuinely uncomfortable. Kuai Liang's consciousness survived the procedure intact. He could think, he could feel, he could remember exactly who he was. He just couldn't do anything about it. His agency was gone, his body belonged to the Lin Kuei now, and it got worse. His cryomancer biology actively rejected the mechanical components. His cells fought the metal. Every second inside that shell was agony. The resurrection kept him alive while ensuring that being alive was the punishment. Scorpion came back as a specter, fueled by rage. Noob Saibot came back stripped of his humanity. Kuai Liang came back fully aware, fully himself, trapped in a body that was no longer his, and screaming at him from the inside. That's not resurrection. That's a prison sentence with a pulse. And the kicker? MK1's timeline reset wiped the LK520 designation from existence entirely. No exploration of the body horror. No deeper dive into a cryomancer rejecting his own metal skeleton. Just gone. A lot of fans called it a missed opportunity, and honestly, it's hard to argue with them. Two Sub-Zeros. Both undone by the people who were supposed to protect them. Bihan was corrupted into Noob Saibot by forces exploiting his violent nature. Kuai Liang was bolted into a machine by his own Grandmaster. The Lin Kuei legacy isn't a family tree. It's a kill list. But if you think being trapped in your own body is bad, wait until you see what happens when the God of Thunder himself goes dark. Raiden, the Dark God Reborn. Every resurrection on this list follows the same basic formula. You die, someone drags you back, and you come out worse than before. Raiden's is different. Raiden never died. He just stopped being himself. After absorbing Shinnok's corrupted amulet, something inside Raiden broke. Not his body, not his powers, his sense of purpose. The god who had spent the entire franchise ordering mortals to lay down their lives for Earthrealm absorbed the essence of a fallen elder god. And he didn't come out the other side clean. He came out about as stable as a being with infinite cosmic power, and a corrupted soul possibly could. Shinnok's amulet fused with his being, and what emerged wasn't Raiden anymore. His lightning shifted from blue and white to red. His armor warped into something forged from raw, corrupted energy, and his mission statement flipped entirely. Protect Earthrealm became Subjugate Earthrealm, which is, not ideal. Here's the thing. This wasn't possession. Nobody hijacked his mind. Nobody cast a spell. Dark Raiden was still Raiden, just a version of him that decided protection through tyranny was better than protection through trust. Earthrealm's greatest defender became its most dangerous threat, and he did it to himself. No sorcerer required. His corruption carried over from the end of MKX into MK11's opening, and for a brief window, the franchise had something genuinely rare on its hands. A fallen god arc with real emotional weight. The guy who spent multiple games telling others to sacrifice everything became the very thing he'd warned them about, all because he absorbed power he was never meant to hold. That's not just a plot twist. That's a thesis statement. But then MK11's timeline reset wiped the slate clean. Dark Raiden gone, corruption purged. Liu Kang ascended to Fire God, took the hourglass, and hit the cosmic restart button. Moving on, and fans were furious. Not because the storyline was bad, but because it was too good to waste. The franchise built toward this corruption across multiple games only to resolve it with a timeline reboot. The backlash was loud precisely because people cared. You don't get angry about wasted potential unless the potential was real. But if you think a god corrupting himself is disturbing, wait until you hear about a queen who was resurrected specifically to destroy her own daughter, Sindel, the Banshee Queen. Sindel's story is one of the most tragic in the entire franchise. And that's saying something, because this is Mortal Kombat, where tragic is basically a job requirement. After sacrificing herself to protect Earthrealm, after being resurrected against her will by Quan Chi as a revenant, and after spending years as a corrupted servant of the Netherrealm, you'd think the universe would give her a break. You clearly haven't been paying attention to how this franchise operates, because Kronika brought her back. Again. Now, Kronika's whole deal in MK11 is merging timelines together, pulling past versions of characters into the present to serve her goal of resetting history. That's exactly what she did with Sindel. She didn't create some new spectral entity. She pulled a past version of Sindel forward, one who hadn't yet died, hadn't yet been corrupted, and dropped her into a present where everything she loved had already been destroyed. A living woman confronted with the wreckage of her own future. Here's where it gets genuinely tragic. Kronika didn't just yank Sindel out of the past and point her at Earthrealm. She exploited the one thing Sindel cared about more than anything, her daughter. Kronika framed Kitana's revenant state as something Sindel could fix, something she could heal, if she just served the time goddess faithfully enough. A mother's love twisted into a leash. Sindel wasn't fighting for Kronika. In her mind, she was fighting for Kitana, which makes it so much worse. And the game leans into this completely. Mother versus daughter. The woman who gave up everything for Kitana, now being weaponized against her. The franchise is literally eating its own tail, and it's doing it on purpose. Sindel loved Kitana. That love got turned into a weapon. The cycle just keeps spinning. Aftermath eventually gave her a different angle entirely, reframing her as willingly villainous, a power-hungry queen who sided with Shao Kahn by choice. And that retcon had the community at each other's throats for months, because it gutted the tragic mother narrative that had defined her for decades. Mortal Kombat 1's 2023 reboot only added fuel to the fire by reimagining her relationship with Shao once again. I don't know what to tell you. Some mothers bake cookies. Sindel got her entire identity rewritten across 3 separate timelines. But maybe that's the point this whole video has been building toward. Look at every name on this list. Scorpion was broken by grief. Liu Kang was broken by grief. Kitana, Jax, Sub-Zero, all of them shattered by loss and dragged back as something worse. Raiden, the god responsible for most of that grief, broke the exact same way. And Sindel's entire resurrection was weaponized grief, a mother's love turned into a leash. Mortal Kombat is a franchise built on fatalities and spine-ripping and over-the-top violence. But its real subject has never been violence. It's what grief does to people when the universe refuses to stop taking things from them. Gods, champions, warriors, revenants, doesn't matter. Grief doesn't discriminate, and in this franchise, nobody gets to mourn in peace. They just get resurrected and told to fight again. The most iconic characters in fighting game history were never supposed to exist. Every ninja in Mortal Kombat, from Scorpion to Ermac to Rain, was born from the same cost-cutting hack. One actor, recolored over and over because the arcade hardware literally couldn't store more sprites. Today, I'm breaking down and ranking every single one of them, starting with the absurd origin story that made it all possible, the palette swap legacy. Here's something that sounds made up, but is completely true. The entire Mortal Kombat Ninja roster was built on a single guy, Daniel Pesina. One actor, one motion-captured performance. The developers just changed the color of his outfit and called it a new character. Not because they had some genius creative vision, because the arcade hardware in 1992 couldn't physically store multiple sprite sets. They ran out of memory, and that accident created legends. Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Reptile, Ermac, every single one of them exists because Midway had zero budget for originality. But here's where it gets interesting. Players didn't see palette swaps. They saw distinct, mysterious warriors with completely separate identities. The limitation was invisible to the audience, and the mystique it accidentally generated was more powerful than anything a full design team could have planned. Then came the secret characters, and this is where the community lost its collective mind. In the original Mortal Kombat, fighting Reptile required a double flawless victory without blocking, followed by a fatality on a specific stage with a silhouette passing across the moon. Most players never legitimately triggered this in their lives, but everybody had a friend who swore they did. Schoolyard myths about hidden fighters spread for a decade with zero way to verify them. Mortal Kombat 2 tripled down. Smoke, Jade, and Noob Saibot were all buried behind similarly obscure unlock conditions, turning secret character hunting into a competitive sport before the internet existed to confirm or deny anything. Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 took it even further. Rain was introduced as a deliberate joke, a character who appeared for a single, split-second flash in the arcade version, purely to bait player rumors. And it worked completely. People went insane trying to unlock a character that wasn't even playable. But the real punchline? Chameleon, introduced in Mortal Kombat Trilogy, Chameleon randomly morphed between every other male ninja mid-fight, cycling through their movesets in real time. He was the most technically honest character in the entire roster. Every ninja had always been a recolor. Chameleon just made that literally the point. But if the palette swap era gave us the blueprint, the characters that came out of it are what turned Mortal Kombat into a cultural phenomenon. Ermac never existed, and then he did because enough people believed in him. Here's the thing. In the early 90s, players poking around Mortal Kombat's debug menus noticed a strange label in the code readouts. E-Mao. It wasn't a character. It wasn't a hidden boss. It was short for Error Macro, an internal programming tool used to detect and log glitches during development. But players didn't know that. They saw a mysterious name on screen, and they did what arcade kids in the 90s did best. They made up a story. Then Electronic Gaming Monthly poured gasoline on the fire. A reader named Tony Casey sent in a letter claiming he'd fought a secret red ninja called Ermac through some elaborate hidden input. The magazine published it. Zero verification, zero evidence. And it spread through arcades like wildfire, because in an era before you could just Google something, a printed magazine was basically scripture. And the wildest part? The developers saw all of this happening and thought, well, I guess we're making him now. When Ermac finally debuted in Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, his design matched the mythology players had already invented: mysterious, red, supremely powerful. The team at Midway essentially reverse-engineered an entire canonical origin to satisfy a demand that was built on a programming label and a magazine hoax. That's not character design. That's fan fiction becoming corporate policy. But his actual lore? Way stranger than anyone expected. Ermac isn't a person. He's thousands of warrior souls, casualties from Outworld's endless conquests, all fused together by Shao Kahn and his shadow priests into a single collective entity. He doesn't say I or me. He says we and us, always. Every line of dialogue, because there is no singular Ermac. There are thousands of voices screaming in unison through one red body. His abilities reflect that composition perfect. Telekinesis, soul energy manipulation, teleportation across entire realms. This isn't a ninja's toolkit. This is a psychic horror wearing ninja colors. And here's where it gets complicated. His origin has been retconned multiple times across different timelines. Was he created by Shao Kahn, by Quan Chi, by some combination of both? There is no single authoritative account of how Ermac came to exist, which is honestly fitting for a character who was never supposed to exist in the first place. He was born from a glitch, raised by a lie, and somehow became one of the most philosophically interesting fighters in the entire franchise. Reptile! Reptile is one of the most resourceful creative decisions in fighting game history, and I mean that literally. Ed Boon wanted a super secret hidden feature after the game hit arcades, but the hardware had other plans. So what started as a deliberate idea became one of the most beloved characters in the entire franchise, built almost entirely out of limitations. Here's what actually happened. Back in 1992, the original Mortal Kombat was running on arcade hardware with brutal memory limitations. Boon conceived the idea of a secret character, but had zero room for new assets. So they took Scorpion's yellow palette, combined it with Sub-Zero's blue palette, and got green. That's it. That's the entire creative process. Reptile is a 50-50 blend of two existing characters because the machine literally couldn't handle anything else. Without that memory constraint, Reptile looks completely different. He's not a character born from a design document. He's a character born from a workaround. But here's where it gets legendary. The conditions to actually fight him were insane. You had to be on the pit stage. You had to win a double flawless victory. You couldn't block a single time during the entire fight. Then, you had to perform a fatality. And even then, you had to wait for a silhouette to cross the moon in the background before Reptile would appear to challenge you. This was 1992. There was no internet, no guides, no YouTube tutorials. Players were passing this information through word of mouth like some kind of underground mythology. Reptile wasn't just the first secret character in fighting game history. He was an urban legend that happened to be real. And then something unexpected happened. The developers gave him a backstory. Over the years, that green palette swap evolved into a Saurian, one of the last surviving members of an entire reptilian humanoid race nearly wiped out by genocidal wars. By Mortal Kombat 1 in 2023, he'd been fully fleshed out as Syzoth, complete with a deeply personal story. His signature abilities, the invisibility cloaking and acid spit capable of melting opponents, suddenly made thematic sense for a character who was always meant to feel alien compared to the human ninjas around him. Now, there's a real debate about whether Reptile even qualifies as a ninja. His physiology is non-human. He has no clan affiliation. His motivation isn't honor or revenge. It's survival. He's a ninja by costume and by legacy, not by any traditional definition. And honestly, that makes him more tragic than almost anyone else on this list. Every other ninja on this roster chose their identity or inherited it through blood and tradition. Reptile is wearing someone else's colors because he was never given his own. A genocide survivor dressed in a costume that was originally just a memory-saving trick. The character who started as the least real ninja somehow became the one with the most painfully real story. The rivalry. The most famous rivalry in fighting game history isn't actually personal, it's political. And it started with one man walking away from everything he knew, before Scorpion and Sub-Zero ever existed. Before the tournaments and the hellfire and the spine-ripping fatalities, there were two organizations with fundamentally different ideas about what it means to be a warrior. The Lin Kuei and the Shirai Ryu aren't enemies because of territory or resources or even a single act of violence. They're enemies because a Lin Kuei warrior named Takeda looked around at his own clan and decided he couldn't stomach what he saw. Here's what happened. Takeda was a skilled Lin Kuei operative who grew increasingly disgusted with the clan's methods. Child recruitment, brutal training regimens designed to break recruits before rebuilding them, an ethical rot that had seeped into the organization's foundation. So he left. He crossed the ocean to Japan and built something new, something better. He called it the Shirai Ryu, but Takeda didn't just leave quietly. He chose yellow garb for his new clan, specifically to mock the Lin Kuei's signature blue uniforms. Then, he taught his students modified versions of the Lin Kuei's own techniques, turning their secrets against them. Every Shirai Ryu warrior walking around in yellow was a living insult directed at the organization Takeda had abandoned. The color war that defines Mortal Kombat's entire visual identity started as a deliberate ideological middle finger from a defector. Takeda was eventually poisoned. Someone slipped it into his tea. The historical responsibility for his assassination has never been officially confirmed, but the Lin Kuei are the primary suspects in both the lore's implied logic and the community's consensus. And honestly, who else had the motive? Takeda had humiliated them, stolen their techniques, and built a rival organization that proved their methods weren't the only path to creating elite warriors. Now here's where it gets dark. That ancient organizational grudge, centuries old, built on philosophy and pride, got weaponized by Quan Chi. He destroyed the entire Shirai Ryu clan as payment to the Lin Kuei in exchange for Bihan retrieving Shinnok's amulet. Every man, woman, and child gone. Quan Chi took an institutional disagreement about warrior ethics and turned it into the specific personal massacre that created Scorpion the Spectre. Every get over here you've ever heard is downstream of a philosophical argument about how to train assassins. The cycle doesn't stop there either. In the current Mortal Kombat 1 timeline, Bihan's corruption of the Lin Kuei pushed Scorpion and Smoke to found a new Shirai Ryu, explicitly built to reclaim the honor that the Lin Kuei had abandoned. The rivalry restarts, but this time it's not fueled by hatred. It's fueled by competing visions of what a warrior organization should be, which is exactly how it started with Takeda centuries ago. Fans remain split on whether this partial reconciliation between the clans feels earned or whether it papers over centuries of bloodshed for narrative convenience. But either way, understanding this rivalry changes everything about the individual characters caught in its wake. Smoke. Smoke is one of the only characters in Mortal Kombat history who exists, because fans literally demanded it. He showed up in Mortal Kombat 2 as a hidden character, a palette swap of Scorpion drenched in smoke particle effects, and players went absolutely crazy for him. They voted him as the character they most wanted to see become fully playable. And the developers actually listened. Here's the thing. The reward for all that fan love, the narrative immediately punished him for showing up. In Mortal Kombat 3, Smoke was forcibly cyberized by the Lin Kuei, stripped of his body, his autonomy, his identity, converted into a weapon for the same clan that had already corrupted everything around him. His closest companion, Kuai Liang, the man who would become Sub-Zero, protested, fought against it, could not stop it. Imagine watching your best friend get dragged into a machine and knowing you're powerless to do anything about it. That's Smoke's welcome to the roster moment. He's one of 3 cyborg ninjas created during this period, alongside Cyrax and Sector. But here's where it gets interesting. Smoke is the only one who fully reclaimed his human soul and free will. Cyrax partially broke free, but never fully escaped his programming. Sector embraced the machine entirely. Smoke fought his way back to being a person. Yeah, that makes his arc the benchmark against which the other 2 are measured, and both of them fall short. His cybernetic body wasn't just a prison either. It contained advanced nanotechnology granting stealth capabilities, speed enhancement, teleportation, and devastating smoke-based attacks. The Lin Kuei built him into something terrifying. But the most significant detail didn't surface until Mortal Kombat 2011, and it changes everything you think you know about him. Smoke's arcade ending reveals that he may not be entirely human to begin with. He's an Enenra, a demonic creature composed entirely of smoke and vapor. Every struggle, every moment of reclaiming his humanity suddenly hits different when you realize the humanity he was fighting to restore might never have been his true nature at all. His entire identity gets reframed in a single revelation. In the current Mortal Kombat 1 timeline, Smoke co-founds the reformed Shirai Ryu alongside Scorpion following Bihan's betrayal. He doesn't hesitate, doesn't waver, just picks the right side and commits. That's been his pattern across every single version of the story. Loyalty, moral clarity, zero ambiguity, and that's exactly what makes the community frustration around Smoke so persistent. He has a genuinely tragic backstory, a visually distinctive identity, an arc built on resilience that puts most of the roster to shame. Players have been saying for years that Smoke deserves more narrative prominence, more screen time, more of the spotlight that characters with half his depth seem to get handed freely. He keeps surviving circumstances that would define or destroy anyone else, and somehow that never quite translates to the attention he's earned. Here's what you need to understand about Noob Saibot. He's not some random shadow demon they cooked up to fill a roster slot. He's Bihan, the original Sub-Zero, the same ice-cold Lin Kuei assassin who fought in the first Mortal Kombat tournament, lost to Scorpion, and died for it. But death wasn't the end. The Netherrealm doesn't let you rest. It took Bihan's soul, stripped away everything human, and rebuilt him as a shadow wraith bound to serve the darkest forces in existence. And then they named him something ridiculous. Noob Saibot is literally just Boone and Tobias, spelled backwards. Ed Boon and John Tobias, the co-creators of Mortal Kombat, reversed their own surnames as an inside joke during development, and it stuck. That's it. One of the most menacing characters in fighting game history walks around with a name that's basically a developer Easter egg. But here's where it gets interesting. Despite the 2-word name, Noob Saibot is a single character. Saibot isn't a separate entity. It's a dimension of his shadow manipulation abilities, the dark projections and clones he summons during combat. Players have debated for years whether the Shadow clone is its own being, but the reality is simpler. Noob Saibot is one wraith with complete mastery over Shadow constructs. The clones are extensions of his will, not a second consciousness. He's doing the Dark Mirror duplicate thing in a way that's entirely his own power, not a partnership. His abilities reflect exactly what the Netherrealm does to the people it consumes. Total mastery of darkness, invisibility, shadow clone summoning, the ability to construct weapons out of pure dark energy. He's not borrowing power from some external source. He is the darkness. The franchise has plenty of powerful fighters, but nobody else embodies their realm's essence so completely. Noob Saibot doesn't use shadow abilities. He is a shadow ability that happens to have a personality, but the real genius of this character isn't his powers. It's the paradox his existence creates. Scorpion killed Bihan because he believed Bihan was responsible for the massacre of the Shirai Ryu. That kill was supposed to be justice. Closure. The defining act of vengeance that Scorpion's entire identity was built around. And what did it actually produce? Noob Saibot. An entity substantially more dangerous and purely malevolent than anything the original Bihan ever represented. Bihan was a cold assassin, sure, but Noob Saibot is something worse. He's evil without restraint, without loyalty, without any of the professional discipline that kept Bihan functional. Scorpion's revenge didn't solve a problem. It created a bigger one. That's the kind of irony that separates decent lore from genuinely great storytelling, and his ambitions prove exactly how dangerous he became. Later in the timeline, Noob Saibot was discovered in Shao Kahn's fortress, where he had reprogrammed the cyborg smoke to serve him and was actively planning to build a cyber demon army. Not serving a master, not following orders, building his own apocalyptic force from scratch. The moment he was freed from basic servitude, his plans scaled to world-ending. The fan debate that still surrounds him is whether any trace of Bihan's consciousness survives inside that shadow, whether the Netherrealm's transformation was total and irreversible, or whether somewhere deep inside Noob Saibot, the original Sub-Zero is still trapped, watching everything his body does and unable to stop it. Nobody has a definitive answer, and honestly, both possibilities are horrifying. Sub-Zero. Sub-Zero is not a person, it's a title, and the two men who carried it couldn't have ended up more different. The original Sub-Zero was Bihan, the elder brother, a ruthless Lin Kuei assassin with cryogenic abilities documented at -500 degrees Fahrenheit. And before you gloss over that number, let me explain why it matters. Absolute zero, the theoretical floor of all thermodynamic temperature, sits at -459.67 degrees Fahrenheit. Nothing in the known universe can go below that. It is the point where molecular motion stops entirely. Bihan blows past it by 40 degrees. That single detail tells you everything you need to know about what cryomancer powers actually are. They aren't physics. They aren't a technique some ninja learned in a mountain temple. They're something older, something that doesn't obey the rules of our reality. Both Bihan and his younger brother, Kuai Liang, inherited these abilities genetically. They're descendants of the Cryomancers, an exiled Edenian race whose ice manipulation is biological, hardwired into their DNA. Sub-Zero was never a fighter who picked up a cool trick. He was born as something that generates impossible cold just by existing. Here's where the story splits. You already know what happened to Bihan. Scorpion killed him. Quan Chi resurrected him as Noob Saibot, the shadow wraith we covered in the last section. Everything human about him was stripped away and replaced with darkness. That was the older brother's trajectory. Same clan, same bloodline, same training, same impossible ice powers, and he became the Netherrealm's most dangerous weapon. Kuai Liang took the name Sub-Zero after his brother's death. Same starting point, same abilities, same Lin Kuei upbringing that turned Bihan into a cold-blooded killer. But Kuai Liang chose differently. He didn't just inherit the title, he inherited the obligation to do something better with it. And he did. After obtaining the Dragon Medallion in Deadly Alliance, Kuai Liang's freezing capabilities surpassed everything his brother had ever demonstrated. He became more powerful than Bihan ever was. But the real difference wasn't power, it was purpose. Kuai Liang dismantled the Lin Kuei's legacy of brutality and rebuilt the entire clan around honor. He took an organization synonymous with assassination and corruption and turned it into something worth fighting for. That contrast is the entire point of Sub-Zero as a concept. Two brothers, identical abilities, identical circumstances. One became a monster, the other became a leader. And their eventual confrontations are among the most emotionally devastating fights in the franchise. Picture it, Kuai Liang standing across from something wearing a shadow version of his brother's face, knowing the man who raised those same cryomancer hands alongside him is gone, knowing that whatever Noob Saibot is now would destroy him without a flicker of recognition. Every fight between them is a funeral that never ends. The community has debated for years over which Sub-Zero is the superior character. Bihan loyalists point to his ruthless efficiency, his uncompromising menace, the fact that he was terrifying before he ever became a wraith. Kuai Liang fans argue that moral complexity beats raw intimidation every time, that a character who chooses to be better, despite every reason not to be, is fundamentally more compelling than one who simply embraces darkness. But here's the thing, that debate is really about what you value in a character, raw menace or earned redemption, fear or respect. And the fact that two versions of the same title can generate that argument across decades of games is exactly why Sub-Zero sits this high on the list. He carries the longest continuous story in the franchise. Two men, one name, and a legacy that stretches from the very first tournament to whatever comes next. But there's one ninja who's been tangled in that legacy since the beginning, one whose story is literally impossible to tell without Sub-Zero, and whose rivalry defines not just these characters, but the entire franchise. Scorpion, 3 words. That's all it took. Get over here is not just a catchphrase. It's the single most recognized attack in fighting game history. People who have never touched a controller, never selected a character, never even seen a Mortal Kombat title screen, know that line. They know the yellow mask, they know the spear. Scorpion isn't a character you have to explain to people. He's a character people use to explain Mortal Kombat. But here's the thing. Underneath the icon is one of the most efficient tragedies the genre has ever written. Hanzo Hasashi debuted in the original 1992 Mortal Kombat and has appeared in every main series installment except Mortal Kombat 3, making him one of only 3 characters present across every generation of the franchise, alongside Raiden and Sub-Zero in some form. His story setup takes about 4 sentences to tell, and every one of them is devastating. His Shirai Ryu clan was massacred, his family was killed, he was murdered, and then he was dragged back from death. Not as a hero, not as a savior, but as a hell-spawned specter fueled by supernatural vengeance. And the vengeance wasn't even pointed at the right target. Scorpion believed Bihan murdered his family. He killed Bihan for it. That single act of revenge created Noob Saibot, one of the most dangerous wraiths in the Netherrealm, and the actual architect of the Shirai Ryu massacre, Quan Chi, went unpunished for years. Scorpion spent his entire existence as a weapon aimed at the wrong person, manipulated into serving the Netherrealm's agenda without ever understanding that his rage had been engineered from the start. Every kill, every act of fury, every moment of suffering was built on incomplete information fed to him by the sorcerer who destroyed everything he loved. He was never a free agent. He was ammunition, and despite all of this, despite being the face of Mortal Kombat on every piece of merchandise, in every trailer, in cultural references that stretch far beyond gaming, Scorpion has almost never been the main character of his own franchise. Developers have consistently built new protagonists around him. Liu Kang gets the hero arc, Cage gets the comedy, Raiden gets the cosmic responsibility. Scorpion just exists in the background, the atmospheric constant that holds the entire universe together without ever getting to lead it. The community debate about whether Scorpion or Sub-Zero is more iconic is one that will never fully die. And honestly, Sub-Zero might be the richer character narratively. 2 brothers, 2 moral trajectories, a legacy that spans every timeline. But cultural penetration settles the argument. Sub-Zero is the deeper story. Scorpion is the image. He is what non-players think of when someone says Mortal Kombat. That yellow mask is the franchise's logo more than the dragon ever was. What makes his arc land, though, is the ending. In multiple timelines, Scorpion eventually leads the reformation of the Shirai Ryu, the clan that Takeda built centuries ago as a philosophical protest against Lin Kuei brutality. The clan that was annihilated by Quan Chi's treachery gets rebuilt by the man who suffered the most from that ancient conflict. From massacre to rebuilding, from vengeance to purpose, full circle. So why is he number one on this list? It's not about power level. It's not about combo efficiency. It's not even about narrative depth, because frankly, several ninjas on this list have more complex stories. Scorpion is number one because he is the consequence of every other ninja on this list. The palette swap era created him. The rivalry with Sub-Zero gave him his motivation. Noob Saibot exists because of his defining act. The Shirai Ryu exists because of what was done to him. Every thread we've pulled in this video runs through Hanzo Hasashi. He is not the best character on this list. He is the one without whom none of the others exist in the way they do. Now I want to hear yours. Drop your own ninja ranking in the comments. Tell me who I ranked wrong, tell me who I missed, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Mortal Kombat didn't just create secret characters. It turned them into gaming's most addictive mystery tradition for 30 years. Every palette swap, every cryptic clue, every impossible rumor whispered in arcades became a potential fighter waiting to be discovered. And after 3 decades of hidden ninjas, diagnostic errors, and background sprites becoming playable warriors, the franchise has built an entire identity around one question. Have you found everything? That's why today, I'm breaking down every major secret character in Mortal Kombat history and what makes each one unforgettable. Starting with the Green Ninja who changed fighting games forever. Reptile isn't just a secret character. As the first secret character in fighting game history, verified by Guinness World Records in 2008, and Ed Boon programmed him into MK1 in a single evening without telling anyone on his team, not even co-creator John Tobias. The official story goes like this. August 1992, third arcade revision of Mortal Kombat 1. Boon gets bored, decides to add a hidden boss fight with insane unlock conditions. He recolors Scorpion's sprite green, gives him both Scorpion's spear and Sub-Zero's freeze, doubles his movement speed, and creates a character with conditions so specific that discovering him required either incredible luck or playground rumors spreading across the entire country. Players had to achieve a double flawless victory on the pit stage when a shadow flew past the moon, never press block during the entire fight, and finish with a fatality. Get it right, and you'd be transported to the pit bottom to fight Reptile for 10 million points. But here's where the story gets weird. Boon told Gamological Society in 2012 that the entire character was conceived during a drive to KFC on a Sunday. Quote, "We did a blue, we did yellow, we can make a green palette. We'll call him Reptile," and like the end of the day, he was in the game. That's the origin of gaming's first secret character, a fried chicken craving and leftover palette slots. The clues Reptile dropped were deliberately cryptic. Look to La Luna hinting at the moon's silhouette. Perfection is the key, referencing double flawless. Blocking will get you nowhere because pressing block disqualified the attempt. Tip EHT Fumato, which is bottom of the pit spelled backwards. Sonya Blade couldn't even fight Reptile in early revisions because her fatality input required the block button, making the fight literally impossible for 1/7 of the roster. Reptile's backstory evolved dramatically across 30 years. In the original timeline, as the last surviving Saurian from the conquered realm of Zatera. His race originally lived on Earthrealm, but fled during the war between Shinnok and Raiden that caused the dinosaur extinction. Shao Kahn promised to resurrect his species if Reptile served. That promise was never kept. Reptile became a palette swap mercenary, serving whoever held power, always chasing the same lie. His physical appearance transformed game by game. MK1 through MK. Trilogy showed him as a human ninja with a reptilian face under his mask. MK4 made him more reptilian with exposed scales. Deadly Alliance went full lizard with a tail and gold armor. In Deception, his body became the vessel for Dragon King Onaga, making him the host for the game's main villain. That's his biggest story contribution. A secret character from 1992 literally became became the physical body of MK's apocalyptic dragon god. Then, MK-12023 completely reinvented him. Reptile's real name is Sizoth. Zaterrans aren't extinct anymore. They live underground in a province called Zekandur. Sizoth's mutation allows him to shapeshift into human form, which his people consider abnormal. Shang Tsung kidnapped his family, forced him into service, then murdered his wife and child. After discovering this, Sizoth joins Liu Kang's heroes. For the first time in 30 years, Reptile is a protagonist, and for the first time ever, his human ninja appearance has a canonical explanation through shape-shifting powers. The contradictions pile up fast. His birthplace shifts between Earthrealm, Zaterra, that's already merged with Outworld, and Zaterra as a hidden separate realm, depending on which game you're playing. His human-to-reptilian transformation across the original timeline was explained as de-evolution from separation from his race in MK4, then quietly abandoned when he appeared human again in later games. Zaterra's timeline is never consistent. Was it conquered 10,000 years ago or at the dawn of time? Different games give different answers, and nobody explains why a Saurian would dress as a human ninja for 20 years before MK-12023 made shapeshifting his literal power. That's 31 years of the franchise's first secret character wearing a costume with zero in-universe justification until the third timeline reboot finally addressed it. But if one green palette swap created the entire secret character tradition, wait until you learn about the gray ninja who hid behind trees and required a sound designer's face to unlock. Smoke's identity changes every single timeline, and after 30 years, nobody knows if he's human, cyborg, demon, or all three simultaneously depending on which universe you're examining. The basic facts seem simple. Mortal Kombat 2 introduced Smoke in 1993 as one of three secret characters alongside Jade and Noob Saibot. He appeared as a gray palette-swapped ninja who occasionally appeared hiding behind trees in the Living Forest stage. To fight him, players had to land an uppercut on the portal stage and wait for sound designer Dan Forden to pop up in the corner shouting, "Toasty" in falsetto. While Forden's face was visible, you press down and start simultaneously. Get the timing right, and you'd be transported to Goros' lair to fight a gray ninja moving at double speed. The clues were straightforward compared to Reptile. Portal told you the stage. Toasty told you the trigger. You can start finding me hinted at the start button. Smoke was deliberately easier to discover because MK2 was testing whether players wanted more secrets or fewer after Reptile's extreme conditions. Then, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 in 1995 split him into two versions. Cyber Smoke appeared on the character select screen. To access human Smoke, you selected Cyber Smoke and held back plus high punch plus high kick plus block plus run before the match started. Smoke would explode into his human form. Human Smoke had Scorpion's Spear, a teleport punch, invisibility, and a smoke bomb that stunned opponents. The combat code 205-205 also triggered Winner Fight's Human Smoke as a secret battle, but here's where the lore fractures. In MK3's story, the Lin Kuei Automation Initiative converted Smoke into Cyborg Unit LK-7T2. He and Sub-Zero tried to escape together. Sub-Zero made it. Smoke was captured and forcibly converted into a purple-tinted cyborg programmed to hunt his former friend. That's the original timeline. Smoke is a human ninja turned into a machine against his will, then reprogrammed by Noob Saibot and Deception to fight as the tag team sub-boss Noob Smoke. MK9 in 2011 introduced the Enenra retcon. Smoke's arcade ending revealed he wasn't just human. As a child in the Czech Republic, a cult kidnapped Thomas Verbata and sacrificed him to a demon. Instead of dying, he merged with an Enenra, a Japanese smoke demon from folklore. That's why he had smoke powers. The ending was non-canon, but Revenant Smoke in MKX referred to himself as Enenra in intro dialogue, making the demon possession semi-official lore. Then MK-12023 abandoned the demon entirely. Smoke is fully human. His real name is still Thomas Verbata. He's the adopted brother of Bihan and Kuai Liang, trained by Lin Kuei arcanist Xiao Qing in practical smoke magic. He uses a karambit knife. When Bihan betrays Liu Kang, Smoke sides with Kuai Liang and helps found the Shirai Ryu clan in Japan. Zero demon possession, zero cybernetic conversion. Just a human using learned magical techniques. 3 timelines, 3 completely incompatible explanations for the exact same power. Original timeline gives no explanation for smoke emission at all. Second timeline says he's possessed by a Japanese folklore demon. Third timeline says he learned Chinese practical magic from a teacher. The Enenra plotline was introduced as a major mythological reveal in MK9, vaguely referenced once in MKX, then erased from existence in MK1 without explanation. And here's what breaks the continuity completely. Smoke and Stryker were the only two Earthrealm Revenants from MK9 who didn't appear in MK11 at all. Every other Revenant got resolution. Smoke and Striker just vanished. Their fates in the second timeline are completely unresolved. Did they stay Revenants? Were they freed? Are they still serving Quan Chi somewhere? The game that ended that timeline never addressed them. In Deception, his cybernetic body was described as nanomachines that could emulate Smoke, but Noob Saibot reprogrammed him, implying mechanical components with software. How do nanomachines have programmable software? The nature of Cybersmoke's body was never coherently defined. Has simultaneously biological nanites and reprogrammable hardware, depending on which cutscene you're watching. But if Smoke's identity crisis seems impossible to resolve, wait until you learn about the character whose name is the developer's names spelled backwards and who was added to the game without the co-creator knowing he existed. Noob Saibot is the only secret character in Mortal Kombat history whose creator hid him from his own development team, and the character's name is gaming's most famous Easter egg that turned into 30 years of canonical lore. Ed Boon secretly programmed Noob Saibot into MK2 in 1993 without telling anyone at Midway, including co-creator John Tobias. After the reptile incident in MK1, Boon had promised to give advance notice before adding secret characters. He broke that promise immediately. Tobias discovered Noob Saibot's existence months later, while the team was already deep into MK3 development. Tobias posted on Twitter in April 2021. Not only had Ed snuck a third secret character into MK2 behind our backs, it felt like he was poking fun at me by naming it Noob Saibot, because the name is their names backwards. Noob is Boon reversed. Saibot is Tobias reversed. Ed Boon later confirmed on Twitter that the Shadow clone is named Saibot, while the fighter himself is Noob. After John Tobias left Midway around 2000, later games started dropping Saibot from health bars and announcer calls, quietly distancing the character from Tobias' reversed name. The unlock method had 0 in-game hints. Players needed 50 consecutive wins in 2-player versus mode, 25 wins on Genesis. After hitting the threshold, a message appeared and the player fought a completely black ninja in Goros' lair who was almost invisible against the dark background. Noob had Scorpion Spear and Teleport Slam, but no programmed fatalities. On SNES, the code BUDDF select bypassed the 50-win requirement. In MK3, he appeared as a blackened Kano model because no male ninja sprites existed in that game's roster. Accessible via Combat Code 769-3F42 in a stage literally called Noob's Dorphin. From MK2 through MK4, nobody knew who Noob Saibot actually was. Just a shadow warrior from somewhere called the darkest region of reality. UMK3's bio said he was a member of the Brotherhood of Shadow. Fan theories about the Sub-Zero connection circulated on forums as early as 1999, but the reveal wasn't official until MK Deception in 2004. His ending explicitly stated Noob Saibot was Bai Han, the original Sub-Zero from MK1 who Scorpion killed. Ed Boon himself voiced the character in Deception. The transformation makes no sense mechanically. Bai Han was a cryomancer with ice powers. After Scorpion killed him, he was reborn in the Netherrealm's 5th plane as a wraith. His ice powers vanished completely, replaced by shadow manipulation with 0 explanation. Netherrealm corruption is the stated cause, but shadow powers aren't established as a Netherrealm trait anywhere else in the lore. Why shadows specifically? Why not fire, decay, or any other corruption manifestation? The games never explain this. The Serena subplot is Bai Han's only emotional anchor. In MK Mythology's Sub-Zero in 1997, Bai Han encountered the demon Serena in the Netherrealm and convinced her to betray Quan Chi. That moment of compassion is frequently cited as proof Bai Han had good in him before corruption. It's the only time the character showed mercy to anyone. MK9 in 2011 showed Noob Saibot thrown into a Solnado by Nightwolf. He was absent with no explanation until MK11 in 2019 casually revealed he survived. 8 years of unaddressed absence, and MK11 gave him red blood despite his established black blood since Deception. The game also used him in only 2 story mode chapters with 0 character development despite massive pre-release hype. Then MK12023 delivered the most radical change. Bai Han is Sub-Zero, the Lin Kuei Grandmaster, and the game's secondary antagonist. He has adopted brothers Kuai Liang and Smoke. Shang Tsung manipulates him into betraying Liu Kang. Kuai Liang takes the Scorpion mantle in an unprecedented unprecedented swap, and Smoke leaves with him to found the Shirai Ryu. In the Chaos Reigns DLC in 2024, Titan Havoc captures Bihan and transforms him into Noob Saibot on screen. It's the first time the conversion is shown rather than happening off-camera between games. The moral characterization swings wildly. Mythologies presents Bihan as capable of compassion through Serena. MK9 and MK11 intro dialogue describes him as always irredeemably evil. Deception suggested corruption twisted him. MK1 shows him as proud and arrogant but not inherently monstrous until Havoc's intervention. 4 different moral frameworks for the same character depending on which timeline you examine. But if a character created as a prank on a co-worker seems absurd, wait until you learn about the fighter who was born from a diagnostic error message that players misread as a roster slot. Ermax is the only character in gaming history who was literally born from a diagnostic error message, and 30 years later, he contains the soul of a murdered king fighting for control of a body made from thousands of dead warriors. The origin is pure accident. Ed Boon created an assembler macro called Ermax, short for error macro, to log software bugs in MK1's code. This was standard Midway practice dating back to Smash TV in 1990. The Ermax counter appeared on the arcade diagnostic screen players could access. After Boon added Reptile in the 3rd revision, Ermax was listed directly below Reptile appearances and Reptile battles on the audit menu. Players saw the word next to Reptile statistics and assumed it was a second secret character. Boon explained in a 2024 tweet, "Unfortunately or fortunately, we listed the number of Ermax that occurred directly after the log/number of times players fought against Reptile. This, of course, made players speculate that Ermac was another hidden character, like Reptile. Soon, rumors of Ermac became stuff of legend. He admitted in 2011 he deliberately kept the meaning secret to fuel speculation. The Electronic Gaming Monthly hoax in October 1993 turned the rumor viral. A reader named Tony Casey submitted a doctored Polaroid showing a red scorpion on the Warrior Shrine stage with Ermac wins as the caption. The image was a complete fabrication. EGM published it anyway. Readers sent elaborate fake unlock instructions. Meanwhile, in MK2, Midway embedded the scrambled message CEAMRODSENTOEXITS. An anagram of Ermac does not exist. Jade appeared with the taunt, "Ermac who?" But the developers never outright denied he was real. Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 in 1995 made the rumor canon. Ermac debuted as one of 3 hidden characters alongside Mileena and classic Sub-Zero. He was the only character who had never appeared in any previous game. The 2-player Ultimate Combat code was 12344-44321. His bio read, "An enigma to all who come into contact with him." Ermac's past remains shrouded in mystery. It's believed that he exists as a life force brought together by the souls of extinguished Outworld warriors. The plural identity was established in MK Deception in 2004. His bio opens, "We are Ermac. We are the fusion of the souls of dead warriors, created by Shao Kahn to obey him without question." He consistently spoke in first-person plural throughout all dialogue. In MK1 2023, he refers to himself as the Collective. The soul count is described variously as thousands, legions, and countless depending on which game you're reading. Then, MK9 in 2011 revealed King Jared was inside him. Jared, Sindel's murdered husband and Katana's father, was one of the souls composing Ermac. Writer John Vogel confirmed this as legitimate lore even outside the non-canon arcade ending. In MEK1 2023, this became central to the story. After Ermac is defeated, Jared's soul literally seizes control of the body and reunites with his family. When an alternate timeline Sindel later kills the Prime Sindel, Jared absorbs her soul into Ermac. Husband and wife are now fused within the same construct. His signature move is the telekinetic slam, lifting opponents with his mind and slamming them into the ground repeatedly. Ed Boon called it one of his favorite moves in the franchise. Ermac's most famous story moment came in MK9 when he telekinetically ripped off Jack's arms, directly causing Jack's cybernetic replacements. But here's where the lore contradicts itself. His creator changes between timelines. Shao Kahn's sorcerers in the original timeline, Shao Kahn himself in the second timeline, Quan Chi in the third timeline. 3 different makers for the same construct. UMK3's bio hinted he was believed to have been very well hidden in MK1, playing into the original rumor. Later games dropped this pretense entirely. The power inconsistency is extreme. He's described as containing thousands of souls in some games, making him nearly godlike. In others, he's a mid-tier enforcer easily defeated. His ability to break free from Shao Kahn's control happens repeatedly, yet he keeps returning to servitude in rebooted timelines as if the character growth rebirth never occurred, and the Jared soul creates a massive timeline problem. MK9 claimed Jared was always there as one of the original souls, but MK12023 gives him a completely different origin through living forest souls, not Edenian warriors. The mechanism by which Jared entered Ermac is incompatible between timelines. But if a character born from a diagnostic error seems unlikely, wait until you learn about the fighter who doesn't appear in most versions of her debut game and whose unlock conditions remained undiscovered for over a decade. Jade is the only secret character in Mortal Kombat history whose unlock method forces players to deliberately handicap themselves for an entire match. And after 30 years, nobody has explained why she's completely immune to projectile attacks. Mortal Kombat 2 in 1993 hid Jade using one of the franchise's most unusual conditions. In single-player mode, players had to reach the match directly before the question mark slot on the battle plan. During that specific fight, they had to win at least one round using only the low kick button. No high punch, low punch, high kick, or block allowed, just low kick. Win a round that way, and a message appeared. Congratulations! You have found an undiscovered warrior from the first tournament. The player was transported to Goros Lair to fight a green, palette-swapped katana with darker skin. On SNES, the shortcut code was up, down, down, left, right, select. Jade used Katana's fan throw, but moved at dramatically enhanced speed and possessed complete immunity to all projectile attacks. Fireballs, ice blasts, spears, everything passed straight through her body as if she didn't exist. She dropped cryptic clues, including Chun, who, as a jab at Street Fighter's Chun-Li. MK9 in 2011 recreated this as a homage fight. Beat the entire tournament ladder without losing a single round. Defeat Shang Tsung with 2 flawless victories and a fatality. And classic Jade appears in Goros Lair with her projectile immunity still intact after 18 years. Jade is Edenian, Princess Katana's childhood friend and personal bodyguard, and one of Shao Kahn's elite assassins. Her defining character moment came in Ultimate MK3 in 1995. When Katana killed Mileena and turned against Shao Kahn, the Emperor ordered Jade to capture her. Jade chose loyalty to Katana over obedience to Kahn. She joined the rebellion, becoming fully playable with a unique moveset for the first time. That moveset introduced the bow staff as her signature weapon, the Razor Ring, a 3-pronged boomerang, Shadow Kick, a body propel kick wrapped in green energy, and Dodging Shadows, a special move version of her projectile immunity from MK2. She was played by Catalan Zamir in MK2, who also played Katana and Mileena. Zamir didn't return for UMK3 due to legal disputes with Midway. Then MK11 in 2019 introduced a romantic relationship with Kotal Kahn that had 0 prior setup. Kotal Kahn didn't exist as a character until MKX in 2015, where Jade was completely absent. The game suddenly presented them as longtime lovers with an established history. Gear customization included items titled Future Queen of Oshtek. Baraka's intro dialogue stated, "If I were you, I'd reconsider becoming Kotal Khan's bride." The entire romance was retroactive, with no foreshadowing across any previous game. Her allegiance shifts dramatically across media. In MEK2, she's a loyal Shao Kahn operative. In UMK3, she defects for Katana. In the Mortal Kombat Annihilation film in 1997, she's secretly loyal to Shao Kahn while pretending to help Earthrealm. The exact opposite of game canon. In MTA9, she's fully good aligned from the start. MTA9's story had Sindel kill Jade during the Earthrealm Warrior Massacre. At the time, Sindel was mind-controlled by Quan Chi. MK11's Aftermath DLC in 2020 retconned Sindel as always evil, never mind-controlled, changing Jade's death from tragedy to deliberate murder by a villain who wanted to kill her. Katana's mournful variation in MKX in 2015 used Jade's bow staff and Razor Ring as tribute to her fallen best friend. The variation's entire aesthetic was mourning Jade's death. Then, Jade returned as a major character with a new boyfriend in MK11 as if the mourning period never happened. The emotional weight of her death was completely undercut one game later, and her projectile immunity has never received a canonical explanation in 32 years. It's treated as pure gameplay mechanic despite being her most distinctive trait since 1993. No magical artifact, no Edenian bloodline power, no training technique. technique. She just ignores projectiles because the games say she does. But if Jade's unexplained immunity seems arbitrary, wait until you learn about the character whose name is a deliberate Prince reference, and whose parentage was retconned from general son to demigod to commoner across 3 timelines. Rain. Rain is the only secret character in Mortal Kombat history who was deliberately created as a joke to mess with players, and Ed Boon has openly admitted he was being a jerk when he designed him. Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 in 1995 featured Rain in the arcade attract mode only. A brief sequence showed a purple ninja fighting Shao Kahn. He wasn't playable in arcades. His name appeared on the energy bar in a completely different font than every other character, because Ed Boon manually constructed the letters rather than using the game's font system. It was the only non-italicized name in the entire game. The versus code message Rain can be found at the graveyard was another joke linking the graveyard stage to Prince references. Boon explained on the PlayStation blog in 2011. Rain was me being a jerk, basically. When we were working on Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, I was thinking, what ninja color have we not done yet? And am a huge Prince fan, so I was thinking Purple Rain. The name Rain combined with purple coloring is a direct reference to Prince's 1984 album and film Purple Rain. In MK Deception's Conquest mode in 2004, Jade defeats Rain and says, "Purple?" Rain chooses his wardrobe most curiously, an in-game acknowledgement of the joke. Boon teased Rain's MK11 Ultimate Return with cryptic Prince referencing tweets in 2020. On home console versions of UMK3, Rain became playable but had no fatalities. He only became a complete character in MK Trilogy in 1996. His backstory was literally recycled from another character. The MK Trilogy bio states, Rain's origins also come from their former realm of Edenia. He learns that his father was once a general in Edenia's army and died at the hands of Shao Kahn himself. That biography was written for Tremor, a brown palette ninja cut from the game. Rain inherited a deleted character's entire backstory. Then MK Armageddon in 2006 delivered a massive retcon. Quan Chi reveals Rain is a direct descendant of Argus, the protector god of Edenia. Rain is a demigod, Hez the half-brother of Taven and Dagon. His ending declares, the half-brother of Taven and Dagon, Rain absorbed the power of Blaze and became a full god. This contradicted everything established in Trilogy. General Sun became God's son with zero transition explanation. MK1 in 2023 stripped his divinity entirely. Rain's real name is Zephyro, revealed in intro dialogue. Has a high mage of Outworld trained at the Imperial Academy of Sorcery. He wields a water scepter decorated with 3 frogs. He conspires with Shang Tsung and General Shao. The plot fails. He goes into hiding with Havix, destroys Sato's capital with a tidal wave, then turns himself in to Empress Melina out of guilt. Liu Kang deliberately removed his divine heritage to humble him. The MKX controversy in 2015 created lasting fan resentment. Rain appeared in story mode with a complete moveset visible in the game's code files. Modders could play as him by swapping character data, but he was never released as DLC. Fans accused NetherRealm of on-disc DLC, holding back a finished character to sell later. Boon aggressively denied this on Twitter. Complete BS. We are literally working on DLC now. A 2016 fan poll asked, who did you miss the most? Noob Saibot won with 45%. Rain came second with 22%. Rain became the first character to be DLC twice when he appeared in MK11 Ultimate's Combat Pack 2 in 2020. His Power Washer fatality was an homage to Queen's Queen 2 album cover, continuing the music reference tradition. He switches allegiances more than almost any character. Shao Kahn in UMK3, Kitana's Rebellion in MK4, solo scheming in Deception, Melina's forces in MKX just to betray her, Shang Tsung in MK1. His loyalty is completely situational across every appearance, but if Rain's parentage retcons seem extreme, wait until you learn about the character whose origin rumor may have been manufactured by the developers and whose identity was completely rewritten between her only 2 mainline appearances. Scarlet's origin story is the most contested in Mortal Kombat history. She was allegedly rumored as a hidden red palette-swapped female ninja in MK2 in 1993 alongside Kitana, Melina, and Jade. NetherRealm marketed her as the second instance of turning fan rumors into reality, just like Ermac. But the rumor probably never existed the way they claimed it did. Ed Boon stated the alleged glitch showing Kitana in red was itself a hoax. No verifiable evidence of any red palette glitch exists in MKSIISROM code. Community veterans described the Scarlet rumor as far less prominent in the 1990s than Ermac's legend. They call it more of a what-if speculation than a genuine widespread arcade-era mystery. The historical record is deliberately unclear. NetherRealm leaned into the legend becomes real marketing regardless of whether the legend was organically widespread or retroactively amplified. MK9 in 2011 made her real as the game's first DLC character on June 21st, priced at $5. She was teased as Lady in Red before her name reveal, voiced by Dana Lynn Barron, who played Sonya Blade in the 1995 film. Her backstory, created by Shao Kahn from the blood of fallen warriors fused with dark magic, a construct similar to Ermac, but made from blood instead of souls. She was kept chained and imprisoned, only unleashed when absolutely necessary because draining enemy blood made her dangerously powerful. Then, MK11 in 2019 completely changed her origin. She was no longer a blood construct. She was reimagined as a starving outworld street urchin taken in by Shao Kahn and reborn through blood sorcery. A person taught blood magic, not a construct made from it. Her design shifted from red ninja to blood witch with more covered clothing, mosquito pattern blood striping, and a head covering with Central Asian design elements. Voiced by Polish actress Beata Pozniak with a distinctive Eastern European accent. She refers to herself as one of Shao Kahn's daughters. The flip between MK9 and MK11 represents fundamentally different character concepts. One is not human, the other is. In the MKX comic series in 2015, Scarlet begged Havok to teach her blood magic, but MK11 says Shao Kahn already taught her, contradicting her own comic storyline. Reigns. MK11 intro dialogue states, "The blood in your veins is Edenian," implying Edenian heritage never established anywhere else, and conflicting with the Outworld orphan origin. Her blood magic powers include blood teleportation, dissolving into pools of blood and reforming elsewhere, blood projectiles fired from her hands, health recovery by absorbing enemy blood tentacles summoned from the ground, blood rain called from above, solidifying blood into blades and weapons, cell siphon draining technique that visibly ages opponents. She shares the Flesh Pit's origin with Melina and Meat in MK9, the only 3 known characters to emerge from Shang Tsung's Flesh Pits as fighters. That connection is never explored. No interaction between the 3 about their shared birthplace exists in any game, and she's absent from MK120-23 entirely. Not as a character, not as a cameo, not as DLC. Despite being promoted from DLC in MK9 to main roster in MK11, she vanished completely in the 3rd timeline. No explanation given. The very foundation of her existence is questionable. The MK2 Red Ninja rumor she's supposedly based on may have been manufactured or retroactively amplified rather than genuinely organic. If the rumor didn't exist the way NetherRealm claimed, then Scarlet's entire marketing premise was built on a fabrication about a fabrication. But if Scarlet's rumor legitimacy is debatable, wait until you learn about the character who has existed for 30 years, with literally zero backstory, and whose identity the developers deliberately refuse to explain. Chameleon is the most genuinely mysterious character in Mortal Kombat history, not because of complex lore, because after 30 years, the franchise has deliberately refused to explain what he actually is. He exists as a walking question mark with a species, origin, and motivation that remain completely undefined. MK Trilogy in 1996 on PS1, PC, and Saturn introduced him as a secret playable character. To access him, players selected any male ninja and held back, plus high punch, plus high kick, plus block, plus run as the match began. The fighter exploded and transformed into Chameleon, a semi-transparent ninja constantly shifting colors through all male ninja palettes. He could also be fought as a secret opponent after beating arcade mode, described as one of Shao Kahn's deadliest warriors. He was absent from the N64 version, replaced by Chameleon. His code was found in SNES and Genesis versions of UMK3 via Game Genie, suggesting he was planned before Trilogy but left unfinished. His entire concept is derivative. Chameleon possesses the complete movesets of all 7 male ninja characters: Scorpion, Classic Sub-Zero, Reptile, Noob Saibot, Human Smoke, Ermac, and Rain. His active color determines which moveset is available. The color changes at random intervals the player cannot control. He has no moves of his own. Upon winning, he rapidly flashes through all 7 colors during his victory pose. MK Trilogy gave him no storyline, no ending, no bio. The only information was the secret fight description calling him Shao Kahn's warrior. For 10 years, he existed as pure gameplay novelty. In MK Armageddon in 2006, he finally received a backstory. It was deliberately evasive, though he had been ever present throughout the crises of the realms. From Liu Kang's first victory to the return of the Dragon King, he had remained hidden from sight, waiting for his moment to come. That's the entire explanation. His Armageddon design featured transparent white skin, turquoise glowing pupilless eyes, and and hands resembling actual chameleon claws. His special moves had reptilian-themed names: Green Wave, Lizard Lightning, Speedy Serpent, Vanishing Kick, Freezing Charge. Everything about his design suggests saurian heritage, but his bio never mentions Zatera, saurians, or reptile. The community has debated for decades whether he's saurian. Evidence for reptilian name, green blood, reptilian move names, transparent color shifting, matching saurian camouflage lore, visual similarity to chameleon. Evidence against: his bio never confirms it. He served Shao Kahn, who destroyed the saurians, and no character ever acknowledges him as Reptile's kin. The official position per multiple sources. This has never been conclusively stated and is purely speculation. If he is saurian, then Reptile is not the last male saurian, directly contradicting chameleons. MK Trilogy bio claiming Reptile was the only male survivor. MK Trilogy positioned him as Shao Kahn's servant. Armageddon repositioned him as a neutral observer who serves no one. His ever-present claim means he witnessed everything from MK1 through Deception, yet affected nothing, intervened in nothing, and no character ever noticed him existing. He was included in Armageddon specifically due to high fan demand, added late in development, yet the developers deliberately gave him the vaguest possible backstory. Despite nearly identical names, abilities, and designs, no game has ever established any connection between Chameleon and Chameleon. They appeared together only in Armageddon's Wii version and never interact. His identity remains completely undefined after 30 years. No confirmed species, origin, motivation, or relationships. He is Mortal Kombat's longest-running unsolved mystery by design. But if Chameleon's deliberate narrative emptiness seems frustrating, wait until you learn about his female counterpart, whose primary unlock code remained undiscovered for over a decade, despite being programmed into the game in 1996. Chameleon holds one of the most remarkable distinctions in gaming history. Her primary unlock code remained undiscovered for over a decade, despite being programmed into MK Trilogy in 1996. She appeared exclusively in the Nintendo 64 version as Chameleon's counterpart. The ultimate combat code 113-840 entered after a game over screen was not discovered until April 26, 2007, when a user named ProtoK posted it on ROM Hacking Forum, ASCMLM's Board 2. Upon entry, the screen displayed. From this point on, Smoke and Chameleon are at your control. Additional methods included pressing C right, C up, A, B, C down, C up, C right quickly at the story screens, triggering Shao Kahn, saying Chameleon. A secret fight homage existed. On Star Bridge, if Dan Forden shouts Toasty, pressing down plus start transports players to the living forest to fight her. Versus code 123-321 triggered winner fights Chameleon. Chameleon is the last female saurian, counterpart to Reptile as last male. Her MK Trilogy bio. Reptile was once thought to be the last member of an extinct race of reptilian creatures, until the appearance of Chameleon. She alone knows the truth about their history and chooses to fight on the side of Earth. Her Armageddon bio on Wii in 2006. Shao Kahn destroyed the realm of Zatera, my home. My kind is all but extinct. I believe the only survivors are Reptile and myself. She cycles randomly through female ninja movesets: Kitana, Melina, Jade, adding Tanya in Armageddon. The color of her name indicates the active moveset. The set changes every 3 to 4 seconds automatically, making her extremely difficult to play. She has appeared in exactly 3 games across 30 years: MK Trilogy, N64, 1996, MK Armageddon Wii 2006, and MK1 2023 as a cameo fighter in Combat Pack 1 DLC, her first mainline appearance in 17 years. Multiple games establish Reptile as the absolute last saurian, yet Chameleon exists. If Chameleon is also saurian, that's 3 survivors contradicting the last of his kind narrative. In Reptile's Armageddon ending, he discovers a female saurian in a sarcophagus. Writer John Vogel confirmed in November 2006. This female is not Chameleon, but an ancient saurian queen, creating an unexplored thread about a third surviving female. Despite sharing names and abilities with Chameleon, no game has established any connection between them. But if Chameleon's decade-long hidden code seems extreme, wait until you learn about the character who started as a fatality aftermath and was never meant to be playable at all. Meat originated as a utilitarian game asset, a skinless 3D model used when characters were skinned by fatalities in MK4 in 1997. Art director Tony Goski created the model and internally labeled it Meat. The developers later made it a playable Easter egg, transforming a Fatality Aftermath into a fighter. In MK4, players entered group mode and defeated all challengers. After completing this, selecting any character replaced them with Meat. Critical limitation: Meat used the moveset of whatever character was originally selected. He was a skin swap, not an independent character. Losing a single battle relocked him. He couldn't be saved between sessions. The name Meat appeared nowhere in-game. It was publicized via text, Meat Lives, on Ed Boon's personal website promoting MK4's third arcade revision. Armageddon in 2006 made Meat fully playable with unique moves: head roll, removing his own head to trip enemies, Meat leg slide, body mutilation, and flesh teleport where he falls apart to teleport. His backstory: Meat was an experiment who escaped Shang Tsung's flesh pits before he could be completely formed. His ending: he defeats Blaze, gains shape-shifting power, loses his sense of identity because he can become anyone, and disappears into obscurity, a meta-commentary on his franchise role. Developer Steve Barron stated in April 2007 that Meat has a cousin named Scully who is just a skeleton, never released. In MK11 2019, Meat appears throughout the crypt in Shang Tsung's blood pits, popping out to startle players. He also appears as a giant chattering skull modifier in Towers of Time. The MK4 strategy guide describes him as assisting Shinnok, while Armageddon ties him to Shang Tsung. He shares Flesh Pit's origin with Melina and Scarlet, an unexplored connection. His MK4 moveset copying parallels Shang Tsung's shape-shifting, suggesting a deeper relationship. But if a Fatality model becoming playable seems absurd, wait until you learn about the character who went from unnamed background sprite to the catalyst for the entire timeline reboot. Blaze went from unnamed background sprite to the catalyst for Armageddon itself. His existence began as environmental art and ended as the series' ultimate endgame threat. In MK to 1993, on the Pit 2 stage, a figure engulfed in flames can be seen fighting in the background, a burning humanoid locked in combat with another figure. This was created by placing Liu Kang's sprite on fire as ambient background animation. Players debated the figure's identity for years. The flaming figure was also visible in MK Shaolin Monk's 2005 on Pit 2. He had no name, no story, just a burning man fighting endlessly in the background. In MK Deadly Alliance 2002, Blaze became unlockable alongside Mocap by completing Conquest mode with all characters. To select him, players highlighted Raiden and pressed down plus start. He fought using generic fire moves, but had no unique story. His name Blaze was established here. MK Armageddon 2006 delivered the dramatic retcon. Blaze was reimagined as an elemental construct created by Elder God Argus as a failsafe to prevent Armageddon, the prophesied event where competence growing power would destroy the realms. Every fighter in MK history was drawn to the Pyramid of Argus in Edenia to battle for the right to defeat Blaze at its peak. Defeating Blaze granted godlike power. In Armageddon's canonical ending, confirmed in MK9's opening, Shao Kahn defeats Blaze and gains this power, leading Raiden to send a message back through time, creating the MK9's reboot timeline. Blaze went from unnamed background animation 1993 to Easter egg secret 2002 to the literal linchpin of MK's timeline reboot mechanism 2006 to 2011. A 13-year journey from set dressing to plot catalyst. No developer has explained whether the MK2 background figure was always intended to become significant or retrofitted later. The Pit 2 figure's opponent was never identified, but if Blaze's promotion seems dramatic, wait until you learn about the character who exists purely to acknowledge the technology used to make the games. Mocap is MK's most self-aware creation, a character who exists to acknowledge the literal technology used to make the games. His name is Motion Capture, spelled with MKS signature K, and has a direct tribute to Carlos Pesina, brother of Daniel Pesina, who physically portrayed Johnny Cage, Sub-Zero, Scorpion, Reptile, Smoke, and Noob Saibot in MK1 and MK2. In MK Deadly Alliance 2002, players completed Conquest mode with all characters. Then, on the character select screen, highlighted Cyrax and pressed X plus down simultaneously. Mocap was added late in development and lacked character-specific features. No unique fighting styles, no weapon stance, no fatality. Has one of only 6 characters in franchise history to never receive a unique finishing move. Mocap's bio describes him as a former martial arts teacher from the north side of Chicago, where Midway's offices were located, hired by Johnny Cage for motion capture work on his movie Mortal Kombat. Kombat, Deadly Alliance. He wears motion capture tracking dots on his body. His entire existence is fourth wall-breaking tribute to the people who physically performed movements for MK's characters. In MK Deception 2004, Mocap appears in Conquest mode, wandering Order Realm and Chaos Realm with no idea how he got there. His Armageddon ending features blazes, destruction, killing everyone. Mocap becomes a constellation visible in the Edenian sky, the ultimate joke elevation for a joke character. Mocap is consistently ranked among the least popular MK characters alongside Shu Hao and Dairu. He hasn't appeared in any NRS-era game since MK9 as playable, though occasionally referenced in dialogue. In a universe of gods, wraiths, and interdimensional warriors, how does a Chicago motion capture artist end up wandering through Chaos Realm? The games never explain, treating it as absurdist meta-joke. But his canonical presence in Conquest modes means he technically exists within MK's fictional universe. These aren't isolated mysteries. Every single one connects to something bigger, something that changes everything we thought we knew about how Mortal Kombat builds its roster. Mortal Kombat has produced some of the most iconic fighters in gaming history, and over 30 years, it has also produced 16 characters so competitively useless that professional players refuse to touch them. That's why today, I'm breaking down every single one of these bottom-tier disasters, and exactly why they failed. Starting with the worst variation ever created in Mortal Kombat history, Unbreakable Sub-Zero. Unbreakable Sub-Zero is the worst variation in Mortal Kombat X history, and this isn't hyperbole, because pro player REO placed him in a Soul C- tier that literally no other character shared. MKX gave Sub-Zero 3 variations. Grandmaster created the Ice clone for space control and ranked 8th in competitive play. Cryomancer added ice weapons for extended range and higher damage. Unbreakable gave Sub-Zero defensive tools in a game that actively punishes defense. The variation's signature move is Frozen Aura, which covers Sub-Zero in ice and negates chip damage while blocking. Sounds useful until you realize blocking in MKX lets your opponent build meter for free. You're funding your own destruction. The EX version adds damage reduction, but costs a bar of meter that Sub-Zero desperately needs for breakers. But then you see the matchup data. Event Hubs tracking shows Unbreakable's worst matchup is Mystic Ermac at 3.3 out of 10. That's the most lopsided ratio in the entire game. His best matchup is Metallic Tremor at 5.3. Not a single winning matchup exists. REO's exact words were devastating. I believe Unbreakable Sub-Zero is the worst character in the game, and he has no winning matchups. Every other variation got placed in normal tiers. Unbreakable got its own private hell. The variation's second special is Barrier of Frost, a parry that requires perfect reads. Correct timing yields 20 to 25% damage. Wrong timing eats a full combo, punish for 30 to 40% plus. The parry doesn't catch jumping attacks. It doesn't protect Sub-Zero's back, so teleport characters like Scorpion bypass it completely. It doesn't work against X-rays. Sub-Zero stands completely still during the animation, a sitting target if it whiffs. Usage statistics tell the complete story. 0.5% pick rate, 71st out of 75 variations. Only 27 total tracked players. Over half listed it as a tertiary third string pick. The Test Your Might community's despair became its own meme. One player wrote, "Unbreakable is great for wasting your time and making you completely forget how to actually play Sub-Zero." Another stated, "The variation pretty much went from unusable to unplayable. But if one useless variation seems bad, wait until you see the character who earned dead last place for over 30 years. Reptile in Mortal Kombat 2. Reptile sits at the absolute bottom of Mortal Kombat 2's tier list, and after 3 decades of competitive play, nobody has ever successfully argued him out of last place. The MK2 tier list has remained virtually unchanged since the game's competitive scene matured in the mid-1990s. Top Player Shock described it as set in stone for years. Reptile holds 12th place out of 12 characters. His acid spit is quick, but deals pathetic damage and gets blocked easily. His slide requires a jump kick setup, or it's completely reactable. His force ball is too slow and too risky against anyone who knows the matchup. These moves sound functional on paper, but crumble against competent opposition. But then there's his signature move. Invisibility was supposed to be Reptile's edge. It makes him completely invisible to opponents. Sounds devastating until you realize MK2 tournaments were played side by side on arcade cabinets. Your opponent can see your screen. The move that defines Reptile's identity is described by competitive players as a gimmicky, useless move in tournament settings. It wrecks casual players online, it does absolutely nothing in competitive play. The real problem goes deeper than bad special moves. Reptile has 0 stun options, Sub-Zero has ground freeze to lock opponents in place, Scorpion has spear to yank them across the screen. Reptile has nothing to set up combos. He's fundamentally incomplete compared to the rest of the cast. Compare him to Jax, who sits at number 1 with unblockable ground pound, devastating backbreaker command grab, and missile attacks that give him the most options of any character in the game. One competitive player stated it bluntly: Reptile is such a weak character that he deserves a tier all to himself. Reptile was one of the most popular characters in Mortal Kombat history. Secret boss in MK1. Fan favorite design. 30 years later, he's still ranked dead last in MK2 with 0 debate. No amount of acid spit spam changes the math. He arrived without the tools to compete and never got them. But at least Reptile had functional special moves, unlike the Shapeshifter, who couldn't even do that. Shang Tsung in Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. Shang Tsung is the worst character in Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, and this verdict comes directly from REO, one of the most accomplished UMK3 players in competitive history. UMK3 is built entirely around launcher combos and run jab pressure. Every top-tier character has pop-ups that launch opponents into devastating juggle combos. Cabal has instant air gas blasts and spin dash launchers. Human Smoke has teleport punch setups and the best interrupt strings in the game. Ermac has telekinetic lift into 35% combos. Shang Tsung has 3 different fireballs and a ground eruption move that competitive players describe as nearly impossible to land even at average levels of play. He has 0 launchers, 0 pop-ups, 0 juggle starters. He's fundamentally missing the core mechanic that defines UMK3 competitive play. But then you look at his signature ability. Morphing is supposed to be Shang Tsung's strength. He can transform into any character in the roster and use their moves. Sounds incredible until you realize morphing requires full screen distance, or a hard knockdown to be safe. Getting morphed is difficult. Staying morphed is worse. The real nightmare is morphing back. During the demorph animation, Shang Tsung cannot block. Any hit during demorph juggles him into the air. This leads to universal infinite combos in the corner against literally every character in the game. His signature move creates his worst vulnerability. Without morphing, his entire kit consists of 3 fireballs with slightly different trajectories and ground eruption. His pressure game is non-existent. His combo potential is 0. His defensive options are terrible. Cabal sits at number 1 with devastating mix-ups and gargantuan damage output. Human Smoke sits at number 2 with teleport shenanigans and infinite combo potential. Shang Tsung sits at the absolute bottom with fireballs and a death wish. REO's assessment was unequivocal. Shang is the worst in UMK3. The competitive tier lists have never placed him anywhere else. The morphing gimmick sounds amazing in casual play, but collapses completely at high level. Every second spent morph is a second you're not playing a character with actual combo tools. Every demorph is a free infinite combo opportunity for your opponent. But if a shapeshifter with no launchers seems broken, wait until you see the fighter whose body literally betrayed her. Shiva in Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. Shiva is ranked in the bottom 3 of UMK3, alongside Shang Tsung, and her problems start before she even throws a punch. Top player Deed _ identified the core issue in his competitive analysis. Her collision boxes are too large. Shiva is physically bigger than every other character in the roster. She's easier to hit with everything. Jump kicks connect on her that whiff on normal-sized character. Projectiles land that would miss others. Combo strings catch her from ranges that wouldn't work against anyone else. Being tall in UMK3 is a mechanical disadvantage, and Shiva is the tallest character in the game. But then, you see what happens when she blocks. When Shiva crouches to block, getting hit causes her to stand up for several frames before ducking again. This is either a collision box glitch or intentional design, and the result is identical. Her blocking is unreliable. Attacks that should be blocked high hit her anyway. Strings that should whiff catch her during the stand-up frames. She's being punished for attempting to defend herself. Her ground pound was deliberately made terrible because Jack's version was overpowered in MK2. Her teleport stomp is reactable at any competitive level. She's the only character in UMK3 who cannot perform glitched uppercuts, an essential advanced technique that every other character can execute. The game's engine actively works against her. Here's the matchup that defines her uselessness. Shiva versus Cabal is a clean 10-0, not an exaggeration. Dead's exact words. 2 equally skilled players. Even when playing great mind games, the Shiva player will not win a single game out of 10. The matchup is mathematically unwinnable. Cabal's instant air gas, blasts, and spin pressure give Shiva 0 options. She can't approach, she can't zone, she can't defend, she just loses. She hits hard when she connects. Her 7-hit combo is one of the most damaging in the game. The problem is connecting. Against competent players using top-tier characters, Shiva never gets the opportunity. Her size makes her a target. Her glitched blocking makes defense impossible. Her matchup spread makes tournament play a suicide mission. Shiva appears in multiple Mortal Kombat games, and she's bottom tier in nearly all of them. UMK3 is where the pattern started. A 4-armed Shokan warrior reduced to a punching bag by her own collision boxes. But if Shiva at least had functional moves, that's more than the Liu Kang replacement who arrived broken by design. Say I in Mortal Kombat 4. Kai is ranked 15th out of 15 characters in MK4, and the official competitive guide calls playing him competitively more of a nightmare than it should. Kai was designed as a Liu Kang replacement after Liu Kang's story ended in MK. He's a White Lotus monk with fireballs and martial arts. His moveset includes standard fireballs, a downwards angled air fireball, and a handstand stance that's supposed to provide mix-up options. On paper, he sounds like a functional zoner with pressure tools. The problem is every single one of his moves either doesn't work properly or was deliberately nerfed between game revisions. But then you see what happened to his fireballs. Kai's fireballs were faster and more efficient in MK4 Revision 2. Then NetherRealm slowed them down for later revisions for no apparent reason. His downwards air fireball has an artificial 3-hit combo limit hard-coded into the game. You can land more hits, but the combo counter stops at 3 and damage scaling kicks in immediately. This caps his damage potential at levels far below the rest of the cast. Top-tier characters like Tanya and Scorpion routinely land 50% plus combos. Kai's best combo option is approximately 35% damage. His handstand stance removes his ability to block entirely. You enter the stance, and you're completely vulnerable to any attack. The stance doesn't provide outstanding damage. It doesn't give him frame advantage. It doesn't open up unique combo routes. It's just a way to remove your blocking ability while looking stylish. Competitive players describe it as incredibly unsafe to set up without providing any benefits. His weapon attacks include 2 very same-looking, spinning, useless attacks that should not be used, according to the official guide. He has an infinite combo, but it's so technically demanding it's essentially impossible to execute in live tournament matches. Every tool in his kit is either nerfed, broken, or pointless. The competitive community's verdict was unanimous. Kai is the worst fighter in MK4, and it's not close. A Liu Kang clone built from half-finished ideas who never received the polish needed to compete. He disappeared from the franchise after MK Armageddon, and nobody noticed. But at least Kai was designed to be mediocre, unlike the fan-favorite Cyborg whose damage was accidentally cut in half. Cyrax in Deadly Alliance. Cyrax is ranked dead last in Mortal Kombat, Deadly Alliance. And this is the same Cyrax who was top tier in MK3, tournament viable in MK9, and one of the most popular characters in franchise history. Tom Brady's definitive tier list placed Cyrax 23rd out of 23 characters. PND Ketchup and Mustard confirmed the community consensus. MKDA has a commonly agreed upon worst in the game, and apparently it's Cyrax. His competitive representation was effectively zero. No tournament placements. No high-level players maining him. No strategies developed beyond casual play. The Cyborg who dominated UMK3 with unblockable bomb setups and infinite combos arrived in Deadly Alliance completely gutted. But then, you see what happened to his damage. Cyrax has catastrophic damage scaling hard-coded into his moveset. His combos deal approximately half the damage of equivalent combos from other characters. You land the same number of hits, execute the same sequences, and watch your damage counter stop at pathetic numbers. His bombs still exist. His command grab still functions, but the damage output is so broken that full combos barely match the damage other characters get from basic strings. The scaling isn't a balance decision. It's a bug that was never fixed. His trademark net projectile is completely absent from Deadly Alliance. The move that defined Cyrax's game plan in every previous appearance just doesn't exist. No net for combo extensions, no net for lockdown setups, no net for controlling space. The character's identity was stripped away, and what remained was broken damage scaling and incomplete tools. Here's the cruelest part. Cyrax was one of the hardest characters to unlock in MKDA. You had to find a specific coffin in the crypt, navigate the unlocking system, and invest significant time to access him. All that effort rewarded players with the absolute worst character in the game. Meanwhile, Su Hao, the most universally hated character in Mortal Kombat history, despised even by creator Ed Boon, was ranked 7th competitively. Deadly Alliance cared nothing about popularity or effort. The math was simple. Cyrax damage was broken, and broken damage equals bottom tier. But if stolen moveset creates a bad character, wait until you see the fighter who stole 2 movesets and became worse than both sources. Kira in Deception. Kira is ranked 24th 24th out of 24 characters in Mortal Kombat, Deception, and she earned last place by being a worse version of two characters who weren't even in the game. Kira's fighting styles were lifted directly from Kano and Sonya's Deadly Alliance appearances. Her Jing-Yi and Kenpo styles are identical to moves those characters used one game earlier. Her Kiss of Death special is Sonya's move. Her Black Dragon Ball is Kano's Cannonball with a pink effect. Her only original move is Nightshade, a low trajectory pink fireball that travels across the ground. That's it. One unique special move in her entire kit. Everything else is borrowed from better characters who deserved roster spots more than she did. But then you look at Deception's core competitive mechanic. Deception is built around safe 50-50 mix-ups. High-level play revolves around characters who can force opponents into unreactable overhead low guessing games while staying safe on block. Characters like Dairu and Cobra dominate because their mix-ups create constant pressure without risk. Kira lacks the tools to participate. Her mix-up game is reactable. Her pressure is punishable. She has pieces of Kano and Sonya's kits, but none of the synergy that made those characters functional. The community's reaction was brutal. Fans questioned why NetherRealm didn't just include Kano and Sonya instead of this Frankenstein amalgamation. Kira brought nothing new to the franchise except proof that you can combine two competent movesets and create something worse than both sources. Her defenders could point to a fast sweep in her second stance and a 37% juggle setup, but competitive players maintained she belonged exactly where Conker's tier list placed her. Here's what makes Kira's failure especially embarrassing. She's not broken like Cyrax, she's not missing core mechanics like Kai, she's not physically disadvantaged like Shiva, her moves function exactly as designed. The problem is the design itself. Taking existing moves from existing characters and slapping them onto a new model isn't character creation. It's lazy asset recycling that resulted in a character nobody wanted to play. Kira disappeared after Armageddon and never returned. The Black Dragon member who brought nothing to the table except stolen moves and bottom tier status. Deception's roster had 24 characters, and competitive players would have preferred 23. But if stolen moves create the worst character in one game, wait until you see the protagonist who was punished for existing with a damage penalty. Shujinko in Armageddon. Shujinko takes 25% more damage than every other character in Mortal Kombat, Armageddon. And this isn't a bug or a glitch. It's a deliberate design decision that NetherRealm never fixed. Armageddon featured over 60 characters from across the entire franchise. Every fighter was stripped from 2 fighting styles plus weapon down to 1 fighting style plus weapon. The simplified system was supposed to create balance across the massive roster. Shujinko arrived with a unique mechanic, stolen special moves from multiple characters that he'd absorbed during Deception's Conquest mode. He could use Scorpion's Spear, Sub-Zero's Ice Ball, Liu Kang's Bicycle Kick, and other signature moves. NetherRealm's balanced solution was simple. Make him die faster than everyone else. 25% faster. But then you realize the math never works. No amount of move versatility compensates for taking a quarter more damage than your opponent. Armageddon's competitive scene placed Shujinko firmly in bottom tier alongside Kai, Frost, and Kano. His stolen moves sound powerful until you're losing every single damage trade by catastrophic margins. You land a combo for 30%. Your opponent lands the same combo for 37%. You need 4 interactions to kill them. They need 3 to kill you. The math is brutally simple. The penalty gets worse in weapon stance. When Shujinko equips his weapon, the damage modifier climbs to approximately 30% bonus damage taken. Using your weapon actively makes you more fragile. The game punishes you for accessing half your moveset. Competitive players learned quickly. Stay out of weapon stance, minimize damage trades, and accept that you're playing a character designed to lose exchanges. Armageddon was described by its own competitive community as a pure turtle fest at high levels. The optimal strategy was defensive play, patient footsies, and punishing mistakes. A character who takes 25% bonus damage in a turtling meta is fundamentally unplayable. Shujinko can't turtle because he dies too fast. He can't rush down because he loses every trade. He can't zone because his stolen projectiles don't compensate for his glass jaw. The protagonist of Deception's story mode arrived in Armageddon as bottom tier and stayed there. A character punished for his own versatility with a damage penalty that made competitive play impossible. But at least Shujinko had special moves that function, unlike Superman's nemesis who couldn't beat anyone, Lex Luthor in MK vs DC. Lex Luthor is ranked 22nd out of 22 characters in MK vs vs. DC universe, and his matchup spread reads like a casualty report with no survivors. Tom Brady's final competitive tier list placed Lex dead last with the lowest total matchup score in the game. His losses are catastrophic. 9-1 against Green Lantern, 9-1 against Flash, 9-1 against Sub-Zero, 9-1 against Scorpion. He loses to nearly half the cast at ratios that make victory statistically improbable. His best matchups are 5-5 draws against other bottom-tier characters. He has 0 favorable matchups, 0 winning positions, 0 reasons to pick him in competitive play. But then you look at why he loses everything. Lex Luthor is too slow for MK versus DCS rushdown heavy meta. His normals can't compete with the game's speed requirements. His startup frames are too long, his recovery frames are too slow. His movement speed is inadequate for both approach and retreat. In a game where speed defines viability, Lex moves like he's wearing his power armor even when he's not. His specials are predictable and punishable on block. His projectile game forces him into ranges where faster characters destroy him. The comparison to Green Lantern makes the gap obvious. Green Lantern sits at number 1 with a matchup spread that wins or goes even against literally every single character in the game. Not one losing matchup, perfect or near perfect across the board. Lex Luthor represents the exact opposite, a character who loses or goes even in virtually everything. The gap between first and last in MK versus DC isn't a tier gap, it's a functional design chasm. Lex's armor gimmick gives him damage reduction during certain moves. His power suit provides projectile options and screen control tools. None of it compensates for fundamentally inadequate frame data and movement speed. You can't armor through losses when your opponent is hitting you 3 times before you finish one attack. You can't zone when your projectiles are too slow to keep rushdown characters out. Has the clearest example in Mortal Kombat history of a character designed for spectacle who simply cannot function in competitive play. Superman's arch nemesis reduced to a punching bag because his frame data doesn't support his fantasy. MK versus DC wanted Lex Luthor to feel like a strategic genius with tech-based advantages. Competitive play revealed he was just slow, punishable, and outclassed by everyone. But if Lex Luthor dominated one game's bottom tier, wait until you see the character who owned bottom tier across multiple games. Shiva in MK9, Shiva in Mortal Kombat 9 has the worst matchup spread in the entire game, and the Test Your Might community voted her the absolute worst character, with one player stating, "Shiva is the worst by far." Really no arguing that IMO, Event Hub's community matchup data tells the complete story. Versus Cabal, 1.5 to 8.5. Versus Cyrax, 2 to 8. Versus Kung Lao, 2.1 to 7.9. Versus Sonya, 2.5 to 7.5. She doesn't just lose these matchups. She gets demolished by margins that make competitive play mathematically impossible. Her only remotely even matchups are against other bottom-tier characters. Against the top 15 characters in MK9, Shiva loses every single one by catastrophic ratios. But then you see her frame data. Shiva's teleport stomp has 58 frames of startup. That's nearly a full second. Any player paying attention can react, walk away, and punish with a full combo. Her low grab is 22 frames. Her anti-air grab is 17 frames. These are supposed to be her command grab mix-ups, and they're all reactable at competitive levels. Her key pressure string, 212F1, starts with a high attack. Opponents can simply duck the first hit and launch her with a full combo punish. She has no real answer to this. Her projectile is a slow, arcing ground pound that travels across the screen at a speed that gives opponents time to make coffee. She cannot compete at range against real zoners like Kenshi, Cabal, or Freddy Krueger. They throw projectiles that actually function. Shiva throws animations that occasionally hit. Her anti-zoning tool is Teleport Stomp, which takes 58 frames and loses to every anti-air in the game. Here's the darkest irony in MK9. Shiva has the best forward dash distance in the entire game. She has the 5th fastest forward walk speed out of 31 characters. Her mobility is actually excellent. She can get in. She can close distance. The problem is, what happens when she arrives? She has no safe pressure, no fast mix-ups, no threatening strings. She gets in and then stands there waiting to be punished. 0 notable tournament placements across MK9's entire competitive lifespan. 0 high-level players maining her. 0 strategies that overcome her fundamental design problems. Shiva in UMK3 was bottom tier because her hitbox betrayed her. Shiva in MK9 is bottom tier because every single tool in her kit is too slow to threaten competent opponents. But if Shiva at least had movement speed, that's more than the character with the slowest walk in the game. Kano in MK9, Kano has the slowest forward walk speed in Mortal Kombat 9, and one Test Your Might competitive player said it plainly. Kano is the worst in the game, bar none. MK9 EA evolved metagame became defined by footsies and poke wars at high levels. Spacing matters. Walk speed matters. Dash speed matters. Movement determines who controls neutral and who gets cornered. Kano's forward walk speed is ranked 29th out of 31 characters. His backward dash is among the slowest in the roster. In a game where Cabal and Kung Lao dominate through superior movement pressure, Kano waddles across the screen like he's wearing cement boots. He can't approach effectively. He can't retreat safely. He just exists in the wrong place at the wrong time. But then you see his matchup spread. Kano's best matchup is Shiva, the other worst character in the game, and competitive players consider it 5-5 at best. Every other matchup is either even or losing. He loses badly to Johnny Cage, whose pressure strings and frame traps completely shut down Kano's offense. He loses badly to Sanya, whose cartwheel and dive kick bypasses defensive options. He loses catastrophically to Kenshi, whose zoning gives Kano zero answers. He loses to Cabal at ratios that make the matchup nearly unwinnable. When your best case scenario is going even against bottom tiers, you're bottom tier. His cannonball is very punishable on block. Opponents can block and launch him with full combo punishes. His knife throw is decent but insufficient against dedicated zoners who throw better projectiles faster. His EX moves have armor, but the inputs are unreliable and the reward doesn't justify the meter cost. His command grab range is poor compared to characters like Jax and Cyber Sub-Zero. His up-ball anti-air is inconsistent and loses trades against jumping attacks with better priority. The community consensus was unanimous. Kano's only potential favorable matchup is Shiva, and even that's debatable. One player summarized it perfectly. All of his matchups are even at best. When the best thing anyone can say about your competitive viability is that you might go even against other bottom tiers, you've reached rock bottom. Kano in MK9 represents a specific type of failure, a character with functional tools who simply can't keep up with the speed requirements of high-level play. But if Kano at least had working special moves, that's more than the variation where drinking got you killed. Drunken Master Bo Raicho. Bo Raicho's Drunken Master variation embodies a specific type of competitive failure, the fundamentally broken gimmick, and Test Your Might's verdict was unsparing. Drunken Master is easily one of the worst variations of this game. The variation requires Bo Raicho to drink alcohol to power up his moves. Drinking applies temporary buffs that increase damage, add armor properties, or enhance special move properties. Sounds like a unique resource management mechanic until you realize the drinking animation leaves Bo Raicho completely vulnerable to attack for its entire duration. At any competitive level, opponents simply react to the drink attempt and punish with a full combo. You're literally standing still and asking to be hit, but then you see the gap between his variations. Bo Raicho's Dragon Spount. Breath variation is rated EI tier, top 15 in the entire game. Dragon's Breath gives him fire breath projectiles, enhanced combo potential, and actual pressure tools that function in competitive play. Drunken Master gives him a drinking animation that gets him killed. The gap between his best and worst variation is one of the most dramatic in MKX. Same base character, same normal attacks, completely opposite competitive viability. The fundamental problem is timing. Drinking takes too long to be used mid-match. You can't drink during pressure because you'll get hit. You can't drink at neutral because opponents close distance and punish. You can't drink after knockdowns because wake-up attacks interrupt. The only safe time to drink is full screen against characters with no projectiles, and even then, you're wasting time powering up instead of actually playing the game. The buffs aren't strong enough to justify the risk. Enhanced damage doesn't matter when you're eating 35% combos trying to drink. One Test Your Might user captured the community's frustration perfectly. It's not because he lacks mids. It's pure and simply his drinking mechanic is just bad. That puts what this variation should have been to rest. Pure disappointment. No competitive player would ever choose Drunken Master over Dragon's Breath. Tournament usage was effectively zero. The variation exists as proof that unique mechanics mean nothing if the execution leaves you defenseless. But if a broken drinking mechanic seems bad, wait until you see the variation that lost its only reason to exist. Lackeyfera/Tor. Lackeyfera/Tor represents the clearest case in MKX of a variation being patched into uselessness. And the community's assessment was blunt. Nobody played that character though. When MKX launched, Lackey had exactly one competitive justification: armored launcher pressure. The variation gave Tor enhanced damage and armor properties on key moves, allowing him to trade favorably and launch opponents into damaging combos. It wasn't top tier, but it was functional. functional. Then, NetherRealm nerfed armored launchers across the entire cast in a balance patch. Test Your Might analysis stated plainly that Lackey pretty much lost the only tool that he was worth for playing him. The variation had one job. The patch removed that job, nothing remained. But then you compare him to Ruthless Pharah/Tor. Ruthless is rated A tier in competitive play. Same character, same base moveset, completely different viability. Ruthless gives Tor damage buffs through a pain and gain mechanic where Pharah stabs Tor to increase his attack power. The variation creates genuine offensive threat with stackable damage increases and pressure tools that remain functional after patches. Lackey gives you a small Pharah who sits on Tor's back and occasionally does things. The gap is comical. Event hubs tracked one of the most lopsided matchups in MKX. Liu Kang Dragons, Fire 6.3 versus Pharah/Tor Lackey 3.7. Not just losing, but losing by margins that make the matchup feel impossible. Lackey's tools simply don't compete against characters with functional pressure and mix-ups. His armor is gone, his damage is mediocre, his neutral game is weak. He's a variation that exists only to prove you made the wrong selection. The community engagement was non-existent. Tournament representation was zero. High-level players abandoned the variation immediately after the armored launcher nerfs. One TYM user summed it up perfectly when discussing Lackey's competitive presence. Nobody played that character though. Not couldn't play. Didn't play. The variation was so thoroughly gutted by patches that the competitive scene collectively decided it wasn't worth the effort. Lackey Pharah/Tor is what happens when balance patches remove a character's identity without replacing it with anything functional. The variation limped through MKX's lifespan as a cautionary tale about over-nerfing. But if Lackey lost his tools to patches, at least he arrived with tools. Unlike the paid DLC Emperor who launched broken, Shao Kahn in MK11. Shao Kahn in Mortal Kombat 11 was a pre-order bonus DLC character, and he arrived as bottom-tier paid content that never escaped despite multiple rounds of buffs. Pro player Arn Kratos identified the fundamental flaw in a Reddit analysis. Every character has a safe attack option to go for a combo except him. Shao Kahn has 0 safe combo starters. Every string is punishable on block. His only mid-string isn't special cancelable, making all his pressure strings practically useless in competitive play. His F2 has massive startup frames and whiffs on crouching opponents. Almost every option in his kit gets blocked and punished by competent players. Has an Emperor with no safe options, but then you see the frame data problems. His key strings 112 and F242 have flawless block gaps that completely negate their frame advantage. Opponents who know the timing can flawless block the gap and launch full combo punishes. His F341+2 is a canned string where the throw follow-up is blockable. His jumping hammer lunge isn't projectile immune despite being clearly designed as an anti-projectile tool. His average combo damage sits at 24 to 26% in his zoning variation, well below the cast average. NetherRealm tried to fix him. The August 2019 patch gave him 1050 health up from 1000. They made his strings faster. They reduced ridicule recovery by 36 frames. It wasn't enough. True underdog. Gaming produced an entire video titled Awful Design. Why Shao Kahn is the worst character in Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate. The community frustration boiled over into legitimate anger at NetherRealm's decision to charge money for bottom-tier content. One Test Your Might user captured it perfectly. I especially feel bad for those who spent real-world money to buy Shao Kahn. Honestly, feels like it was a scam. Players paid for early access to a boss character and received a fighter with no safe pressure, terrible frame data, and matchup spreads that made competitive play nearly impossible. Shao Kahn conquered realms in lore. In MK11, he couldn't conquer a single favorable matchup. The Emperor of Outworld reduced to bottom-tier paid DLC, a character so fundamentally flawed that multiple patches couldn't save him from his own design problems. Pre-order bonuses are supposed to reward loyal fans. Shao Kahn rewarded them with buyer's remorse. But if paying for Shao Kahn felt like a scam, at least he had complete strings. Unlike the guest character rated horrendous. Rambo in MK11. Rambo holds a singular distinction on Rewind's final MK11 tier list, the only character placed in the horrendous tier. And that's below even Shao Kahn. Top pro player Gurr explained the problem in his matchup guide. It's hard to win with Rambo on the high level. The players should rely on gimmicks and knowledge checking. Once opponents learn the matchup, Rambo's tools evaporate. His game plan is built entirely on opponents not knowing what his moves do. In a tournament setting where players study matchups religiously, this is a death sentence. Knowledge checking works exactly once against competent players. After that, you're playing a character with no functional game plan, but then you see his frame data and range. Rambo's normals have short range. His punishes are weak even when opponents give him opportunity. opportunities. Key strings contain flawless block gaps that knowledgeable opponents exploit for full combo punishes. His low option off the overhead low mix-up is slow enough to be reactable at high level. His movement speed is poor, described by competitive players as a slower version of Rain with less mobility. He can't get in effectively. He can't zone effectively. He exists in a middle distance where nothing works. Event Hub's matchup data shows his best matchup is newbie Saibot at a barely favorable 5.9 out of 10. His worst matchup is Cabal at 4.4. He has almost no favorable matchups across the entire roster, most sit at 5.5 or worse. Rambo's kit is built around command grabs and trap setups, but in MK11's neutral heavy competitive meta, his tools don't provide enough reward to justify their risk. His tournament representation was extremely rare. No notable placements at major events. No high-level players championing the character. No breakthrough strategies that overcame his fundamental problems. Rambo arrived as DLC guest character and immediately settled into bottom tier. The action hero who single-handedly won wars in film couldn't win a single favorable matchup in Mortal Kombat 11. A guest character is supposed to generate hype and drive sales. Rambo generated disappointment and tier list debates about whether he or Shao Kahn deserved the absolute bottom spot. Rewind settled it by creating a tier below bottom specifically for Rambo. Horrendous. A tier of one. But if Rambo at least had decent damage output, that's more than the franchise mascot in his own reboot. Sub-Zero in MK1 2023. Sub-Zero in Mortal Kombat 1 2023 is the franchise mascot frozen out of his own reboot, and pro player Honeybee called Sub-Zero and Reptile the worst characters in the game at launch. MK1 is widely considered one of the most balanced Mortal Kombat games NetherRealm has ever produced. The tier gaps are narrow. Most characters are viable in competitive play. Sub-Zero stood out at launch as the game's clearest bottom-tier character despite being one of the two faces of the entire franchise. The numbers back up the claim. Sub-Zero has the lowest combo damage in the roster. He's capable of landing 30 to 40 hit combos that don't break 35% damage. That's pathetic output when other characters achieve comparable damage in far fewer hits with better conversion opportunities. But then you see his punishability. Sub-Zero is the most punishable character in Mortal Kombat 1. His Ice Clone has approximately 1.5 seconds of punishable recovery frames. 98% of the roster can punish it on reaction with full combo punishes. The move that defines Sub-Zero's identity in every game since MK2 is a liability in MK1. You throw out Ice Clone, and competent opponents walk forward and launch you for free. The risk-reward is inverted. You take all the risk. They get all the reward. He was actually stronger in the beta. NetherRealm nerfed him before launch, and his EX clone was bugged post-patch, refusing to freeze opponents properly. Fast mids dominate MK1's competitive meta, and Sub-Zero simply doesn't have them. His slow normals and minimal offensive threat meant near zero representation in pro-competition tournament events. Players chose literally anyone else. The Ice Ninja who appears on every piece of Mortal Kombat marketing was competitively irrelevant in his own reboot. Sub-Zero eventually rose from the bottom as new cameos like Farah created synergies that covered his weaknesses. But his launch state represents one of the franchise's most embarrassing moments, a character so central to Mortal Kombat's identity that his competitive irrelevance felt almost personal. The co-mascot of the entire series arrived in the reboot as bottom tier, and the competitive community had to watch the Ice Ninja lose to everyone for months before patches and DLC cameos finally gave him functional tools. 16 characters across 30 years. 16 examples of competitive failure, and every single one tells the same story. Broken design, missing tools, or mechanics that punish the player for using. Mortal Kombat has been making parents, politicians, and censorship boards lose their minds for over 30 years. From characters so offensive they triggered Senate hearings, to designs so lazy their own creators publicly disowned them, this franchise has never stopped pushing buttons. Today, I'm breaking down every controversial character in Mortal Kombat history and exactly why they caused so much chaos. Starting with the original Sin himself. Kano has been ripping hearts out of chests since 1992, and he literally helped change the law doing it. Here's the thing. When Mortal Kombat hit arcades, 2 fatalities got singled out during congressional hearings on video game violence. Sub-Zero's spine rip was one, Kano's heart rip was the other. Those two finishing moves were directly cited as evidence that the gaming industry needed regulation, and the fallout from those hearings led to the creation of the ESRB rating system. Every age rating you've ever seen on a video game box exists in part because Kano shoved his fist through someone's ribcage in a pixelated arcade cabinet. But here's where it gets funny. Despite being iconic enough to trigger federal attention, Kano got benched from Mortal Kombat 2 and Mortal Kombat 4. Both times, fans were furious. The character was apparently too controversial to ignore, but easy enough to leave off the roster. And then Deadly Alliance in 2002 gave him a complete personality transplant. Suddenly, Kano speaks with an Australian accent, throws around Aussie slang, and leans into this charismatic criminal energy that somehow became his defining trait. A late-game identity change that had zero setup and absolutely no reason to work. But it did. Fans loved it. That's the tension with Kano. He's a violent, backstabbing mercenary whose signature move helped reshape an entire industry, and the community adores him for it. His controversy is historical, not ongoing. But if you think a Senate hearing is dramatic, wait until you see the character that made their own creators publicly disown them. Nightwolf. NetherRealm tried to fix this character twice. They arguably made it worse both times. Nightwolf debuted in Mortal Kombat 3 back in 1995, and his entire identity was Native American warrior. That's it. No tribe, no nation, no cultural specificity whatsoever. Just the greatest hits of Hollywood stereotypes. Shirtless, war paint, tomahawk, feathered headband. Every single visual cue pulled from decades of lazy media shorthand. But here's where it gets complicated. The 2011 reboot tried to course correct by assigning him a Lakota identity. Progress, right? Then MK11 scrapped that and placed him in a fictional tribe called the Matoka, while still using actual Lakota language. So now you've got a made-up people speaking a real people's words. That's not sensitivity. That's confusion wearing a mask. And his signature mechanic, sin eating, the thing that defines his entire character arc, it has zero basis in indigenous American spirituality. Zero. Sin eating is a Western European folk tradition. It just sounded exotic enough that nobody on the development team questioned it. His move list doesn't help either. A scalping brutality, an attack literally called native violence. A tomahawk chop that mimics the exact gesture indigenous communities have spent decades protesting at sports stadiums. Here's the thing. We know what good representation looks like because Killer Instinct's Thunder exists. That character was developed with actual tribal consultation, and the difference is night and day. Indigenous creators have produced detailed breakdowns cataloging every specific cultural violation in Nightwolf's design. The criticism isn't vague outrage. It's informed, documented, and devastating. But if you think mishandled representation is where the controversy peaks, wait until you see the character whose entire concept aged like milk left in the sun. Stryker. Let me set the scene for you. It's 1995, and Mortal Kombat 3 drops with a roster full of cyborg ninjas, thunder gods, and interdimensional sorcerers. And right in the middle of all of it stands Curtis Stryker, an NYPD officer. Just a regular cop with a gun and a nightstick, standing next to people who can literally reshape reality. It was a weird sell from the start, but nobody really cared because it was the 90s. And weird was the whole point. But here's where it gets complicated. In MK9, released in 2011, Stryker has a fatality where he pulls out his gun, looks directly at his opponent, and says police brutality coming up before executing them. In 2011, that landed as a dumb one-liner, a throwaway joke. Nobody blinked. After 2020, that exact same line reads like something from a protest sign, and suddenly the joke isn't funny anymore. Most people assumed NetherRealm would quietly retire the character, just let him fade into the background like dozens of other fighters who outlived their relevance. But they didn't. Stryker came back in MK1 as a cameo character in 2023. And here's the kicker. They redesigned him, removed the obvious police uniform, toned down the cop imagery, made him look more like a generic tactical fighter. But his moveset? Identical. Gun, taser, nightstick, lethal force without a second thought. They repainted the car, but but left the engine completely untouched. He is functionally still doing police brutality, just dressed more ambiguously, so you don't immediately think about it. NetherRealm has never publicly addressed why they kept him. Zero explanation. No developer blog, no interview quote, nothing. And that silence says more than any redesign ever could, because it makes the whole thing look like a deliberate choice to sidestep the conversation rather than actually engage with it. The community is predictably split. Some fans see the subtle redesign as a reasonable evolution. Others call it cosmetic deflection that changes absolutely nothing substantive. And honestly, both sides have a point. But at least Striker's controversy is about real-world optics. The next character on this list sparked outrage over something far more culturally sensitive: Shiva. Shiva has the rare honor of being controversial twice for two completely different reasons, in two completely different eras. She's a four-armed Shokan warrior introduced in Mortal Kombat 3, and for most of her existence, the debate around her was a slow burn. When NetherRealm redesigned her from MK9 through MK11, they swapped out her more alien, monstrous appearance for a humanized face model. Fans immediately split. One side called it desexualization, the other called it character cohesion. Standard internet discourse. Heated, but manageable. But then 2021 happened, and Shiva became something else entirely. Here's the thing. In MK11, her stomp move was genuinely oppressive, unblockable, difficult to punish, and absolutely dominant in competitive play. In April 2021, a female streamer was repeatedly stomped during tournament play and visibly broke down crying on camera. The clip went viral overnight. Within weeks, NetherRealm issued a balance patch, and not a small one. They slapped a 61-frame recovery increase on the stomp, removed duck frames entirely, and reduced Shiva's health from 1,000 to 950. For a studio that typically takes months to adjust balance, this was lightning speed. And that's where the real controversy started. The community fractured completely. One camp argued that NetherRealm caved to emotional manipulation, that a crying streamer shouldn't dictate competitive balance. The other camp pointed out that the stomp was genuinely broken and the patch was overdue regardless of the catalyst. Whatever side you fall on, the timeline speaks for itself. Viral emotional moment, rapid developer response, significant mechanical changes. It's one of the clearest documented cases in fighting game history where a single stream moment demonstrably accelerated a balance decision. But if you think a crying streamer causing a game patch is wild, wait until you hear about the character whose fans were so toxic they became a whole separate controversy. Fujin. Fujin is a literal god, not a powerful warrior, not a sorcerer with delusions of grandeur, an actual deity whose one job, his entire reason for existing in the Mortal Kombat universe, is protecting Earthrealm. He debuted in MK4 back in 1997, and the game made a big deal about it. Wind God, Raiden's brother, Earthrealm's divine protector, cool. Then Deadly Alliance came out in 2002, and Earthrealm was under direct, active, existential threat. Shinnok had just tried to destroy everything. The Deadly Alliance was forming, and Fujin, gone. Not captured, not depowered, not written out with some clever excuse. Just gone. No mention, no explanation. The god whose entire job description was protect this specific realm apparently had somewhere better to be. He popped up briefly in Deception in 2004 as a cameo, and returned as a playable fighter in Armageddon in 2006. But neither game gave him any real narrative weight. He was there technically, but technically present isn't exactly what you'd expect from a divine guardian during multiple apocalyptic events. Then he vanished again. From 2006 to his MK11 DLC return in 2020, that's 14 years on the bench, while Shao Kahn and Kronika both took their shots at destroying reality. The designated protector of Earthrealm was missing for over a decade of existential threats. Zero divine intervention. Ed Boon essentially admitted that Fujin simply wasn't popular enough to justify a bigger role, which is honest, sure. But it's also admitting that popularity metrics overruled basic story logic. You created a guardian god, told the audience he exists to protect Earth, and then benched him because not enough people picked him in versus mode. His MK11 version quietly acknowledges that he's been away without ever actually explaining where he was or why. The game just moves forward, leaving this enormous plot hole baked directly into canon. Some fans argue the long bench actually helped him, because at least he couldn't accumulate more forgettable appearances. That's the nicest thing anyone can say. His absence preserved what little goodwill existed. But if you think a missing god is a storytelling problem, wait until you meet a villain who retroactively broke the entire timeline she was never part of. Most characters on this list are controversial because fans are divided. Some love them, some hate them. Shu Hao doesn't have that problem. Everybody hates Shu Hao, including the people who made him. He debuted in Deadly Alliance in 2002 as a Mongolian Red Dragon operative with a cybernetic heart implant strapped to his chest. If that sounds familiar, it's because Kano had been rocking the exact same gimmick for a decade already. So right out of the gate, the character's signature design element was somebody else's signature design element. Not a great start. His storyline was somehow even worse. He infiltrated the Special Forces, planted a bomb that destroyed the Outer World Investigation Agency's portal technology, and then immediately got killed by Jax in the same game. That's peak new character energy right there. One massive destructive act followed by instant irrelevance. But here's where it gets funny. In 2009, Ed Boon himself tweeted that while he didn't hate any MK characters, he was never a big fan of Shu Hao. That screenshot has been circulating for 15 years and counting. Game Informer later confirmed Shu Hao was one of Boon's least favorite characters, and designer John Vogel reportedly declared Shu Hao's death in Deadly Alliance canon specifically because he wanted to permanently remove the character from existence. It didn't stick. Armageddon brought him back in 2006 just to kill him again in the opening cinematic, and then in MKX, his severed head shows up as a prop being carried by a background character. The developers literally turned their own creation into a trophy. The community received it as a victory lap, and honestly, it was. He's ranked at or near the bottom of every worst MK character list on every major platform for over 20 years straight. That kind of sustained, universal hatred is genuinely rare in any franchise. But if you think being despised by your own creators is bad, wait until you see what happens when a villain fails at a cosmic level. Mocap. This might be the funniest character in Mortal Kombat history, and the best part is that nobody meant for it to be funny. Mocap appeared in Deadly Alliance in 2002 as a secret unlockable character, and he was meant to be a tribute. A genuine, heartfelt tribute to Carlos Pesina, the real-life motion capture actor whose physical performances helped bring MK's fighters to life since the original arcade days. The name itself is literally motion capture with the C swapped for a K, because of course it is. Mortal Kombat's letter-swapping tradition is so deeply embedded in the franchise's DNA that even their tributes follow the naming convention. It's a joke about itself, and it doesn't even realize it. But here's the thing. The team added Mocap so late in Deadly Alliance's development cycle that they forgot to give him a fatality. Let that sink in. A finishing move, the one mechanic that defines Mortal Kombat as a franchise. The thing the entire series is built around. Gone. Just not there. He also received no unique weapon style and no original fighting techniques, meaning their tribute to the man who literally animated MK's roster is a character who cannot fight in any distinctive way. It gets better. In Deception's Conquest mode, Mocap shows up as a lost soul, wandering around asking players for help, which is an unintentionally perfect metaphor for a character who exists but has absolutely zero purpose. His final playable appearance came in Armageddon in 2006, which was basically a roster graveyard where every character NetherRealm didn't know what to do with got dumped into one game. And the debate around Mocap is genuinely interesting when you think about it. Does honoring someone require making them a playable fighter? And if you do make them playable, is a broken, fatality-less secret character actually an honor? Or is it accidentally the most disrespectful tribute in gaming history? You almost can't be mad at Mocap. He's too absurd. He's a fourth wall-breaking accident that somehow became a permanent part of Mortal Kombat lore. But absurd or not, he's got nothing on our next entry when it comes to characters the developers actively wanted to erase from existence. Meet Every franchise has a bottom. Not a controversial bottom or a broken bottom, just a character who exists so close to nothing that you almost respect it. For Mortal Kombat, that character is Meat. Meat first showed up in MK4 back in 1997, and calling him a character is being generous. He was a hidden skin variant, a skinless humanoid with exposed muscles, visible organs, and an eyeball dangling from his head like a Christmas ornament nobody wanted. He wasn't designed. He wasn't planned. He was a visual gag buried in the code that somehow escaped containment. But here's where it gets funny. Years later, the developers decided Meat needed a backstory, so they gave him one. A failed experiment from Shang Tsung's Flesh Pits. Which sounds cool until you realize the entire community views that as a desperate attempt to justify a design that had zero reason to exist in the first place. It's like writing a biography for a doodle you drew during a meeting. Then came Armageddon in 2006, the game that said everyone gets in, and I mean everyone. Meat was elevated to full playable character status in the same roster that also brought back mocap. Let that sink in. Two of the worst characters in franchise history, sharing a game, standing side by side in the select screen. That's not a roster. That's a support group. And his harakiri, his self-fatality, he holds in gas until he literally explodes. That's the finishing move. Either that's the most on-brand thing ever created for a skinless meat man, or a developer communicating exactly how they felt about the character through game mechanics. Honestly, it might be both. Here's the thing about Meat though. He's not offensive, he's not broken. He has no competitive player base, no meaningful story presence, and no mechanical identity whatsoever. He occupies a roster slot that could have gone to literally any legacy character with an actual history. Even his defenders, the people who argue he works as absurdist humor, struggle to name a single specific redeeming quality beyond the concept itself. He's controversial, not because he's too much of anything. He's controversial because he's nothing at all. But if Meat represents the absolute bottom of the barrel, at least he got there honestly. The next character on our list clawed their way to infamy through something far more calculated. Mileena. Mileena has one of the strangest character arcs in fighting game history. Not because of what happens to her in the games, but because of what happened to her outside of them. She debuted in Mortal Kombat 2 back in 1993 as a palette swap of Kitana. The concept was simple. She's a clone with a horrifying Tarkatan mouth full of razor teeth, and she hides that face behind revealing outfits and seductive behavior. Sexuality as a mask for monstrosity. It was a decent character hook for 1993. The problem is the franchise kept revisiting that exact same hook for 30 years without ever questioning whether it still worked. MK9 in 2011 made it worse. Way worse. Mileena was written with a childlike personality, innocent, naive, almost playful in the way she spoke and acted, but they kept her in one of the most revealing outfits in the entire game. A childlike mind in a hypersexualized body. Critics flagged it immediately as one of the most uncomfortable characterizations in the franchise, and honestly, it's hard to argue with them. Then came MKX in 2015, and here's where it gets really interesting. Mileena received a redesign that gave her more human-looking lips, softening her signature monstrous appearance. Shortly after, killed off early in the story. The community noticed that timeline instantly, changed the look, removed the character. Fans called it a cosmetic death sentence, but her absence created something nobody at NetherRealm expected. Fan demand for Mileena's return didn't just grow, it became aggressive, relentless. Developers later disputed whether it crossed into actual harassment, but the sheer volume was undeniable. It became a documented PR issue for the studio. Every roster reveal, every character announcement, the response was the same. Where is Mileena? And the pressure worked. She returned as DLC in MK11 Ultimate in 2020, and she came back different. Not just visually, but narratively. Her return included a confirmed romantic subplot with Tanya, representing the franchise's most explicit LGBTQ+ storyline to date. It was a direct response to years of fan advocacy, but the reception was complicated. Some in the LGBTQ+ community welcomed the representation as meaningful and long overdue. Others viewed the confirmation as an afterthought, something used to soften criticism of how the character had been handled for decades. Neither group was entirely wrong. Here's the thing. Melina's story is one of the clearest examples in fighting game history of fan behavior directly determining a character's inclusion. NetherRealm essentially confirmed this by addressing the fan response in interviews. Whether you call it passionate advocacy or something uglier, the result was the same. The fans demanded her back, and they got her. Just not exactly the version anyone expected. But if Melina's controversy is about a character the fans love too much, the next one is about a character that literally nobody loved, not even the people who made him. Kronika. Every character on this list failed in a specific way. Bad design, bad timing, bad cultural awareness, bad balance. Kronika failed in every way simultaneously, and she did it at the worst possible moment. She was introduced in Mortal Kombat 11 as the main antagonist and final boss, not just any villain, the most powerful being in the entire franchise. A cosmic titan who could manipulate the flow of time itself, rewrite reality, erase anyone from existence with a thought. She was supposed to be the ultimate threat, the culmination of over 25 years of Mortal Kombat storytelling. Here's the problem. She didn't exist for any of those years. 0 appearances, 0 mentions, 0 foreshadowing. Then suddenly, MK11 asks you to accept that this all-controlling entity had been pulling strings behind every major event in the franchise through retroactive flashbacks shoved into the first 3 games. The most powerful character in MK history was apparently just invisible for over 2 decades, and her design reflects exactly how rushed she feels. Everything about Kronika radiates designed by committee energy that critics immediately identified. She looks generic, she sounds generic, she radiates absolutely nothing. For a character meant to be the franchise's ultimate cosmic threat, she has less visual identity than half the roster. But the boss fight is where it gets truly painful. You cannot throw her. You cannot use fatal blows. Many of her attacks deal unavoidable chip damage. This isn't difficulty. This is restriction disguised as challenge. Players weren't losing because Kronika was clever or intimidating. They were losing because the game literally removed their tools. That's not a final boss. That's a punishment. Then, the Aftermath DLC dropped in 2020 and somehow made everything worse. It revealed that Shang Tsung, a villain who has been interesting since 1992, had been scheming for his own power the entire time, ultimately betraying everyone and seizing Kronika's hourglass for himself. The supreme cosmic titan who controls time itself got completely outmaneuvered by a sorcerer she should be able to erase from existence. The franchise's ultimate threat reduced to a stepping stone for a man with actual personality, and her in-story decisions match that incompetence perfectly. She turns her back on known dangerous opponents. She wastes resources in ways that contradict her established omniscience. The most powerful character in franchise history routinely makes the worst decisions of anyone in the cast. The community response was unanimous. Across Reddit, GameFAQs, and every fighting game forum, Kronika is rated the weakest villain in Mortal Kombat's roster. Not despite being the most powerful, because of it. Korean gaming Wikinamu Wiki went further and labeled her the worst character in video game history. That's what Kronika represents. Not a cultural misstep. Not a balance disaster. A narrative void at the center of the franchise's biggest moment. Over 25 years of Mortal Kombat building toward a climax, and the character at the center of it generated no menace, no personality, and not a single memorable moment. The worst character in video game history. And honestly, it's hard to argue. Mortal Kombat has spent 30 years creating some of the most iconic fighters in gaming history, but it's also produced characters so universally despised that their own creators have spent decades apologizing for them. From lazy clones that insulted player intelligence, to broken spam mechanics that destroyed competitive integrity, to serial killers who murdered fan favorites just to generate cheap heat. Today, I'm ranking the 8 most hated characters in Mortal Kombat history, from the merely disliked to the absolutely despised. And trust me, the top spot earned its crown through 20 years of developer humiliation. Jackie Briggs is the only character on this list who's actually good at fighting games, but nobody cares. She debuted in Mortal Kombat X as Jax's daughter and immediately landed dead last in every popularity poll. An MK Online survey ranked all 9 MKX newcomers, and Jackie scraped the bottom with just 3.4% of the vote. A GameFAQs thread titled "Jackie Briggs is the worst MK character ever made" ran 13 pages deep with players tearing into her design. Here's the problem. She's boring. Aggressively, offensively boring. Players called her Femjax because that's exactly what she is. A military fighter with gauntlet punches and a roster already drowning in special forces characters. Her concept art showed way more interesting designs, rebel aesthetics, and agent looks. But NetherRealm went with generic soldier number 7. One user perfectly captured the frustration by saying she has the most generic appearance ever seen in Mortal Kombat, and the least exciting gimmick, real-life martial arts, and that's it. But wait, it gets worse. Her story mode chapters in both games revolved entirely around Jax's PTSD, instead of developing her own identity. Her MK11 arcade ending has her literally erase herself from existence to save her father. Even her own conclusion is about someone else. Among the 4 combat kids, she ranked dead last every time. Takeda had whip blades and Kenshi's lineage. Cassie inherited Johnny's charisma. Kung Jin brought archery and a compelling character arc. Jacqui brought gauntlets and daddy issues. The cruelest irony is that competitively, Jacqui dominated MK11 as a top 3 character, appearing in tournament top 8s constantly. Players who hated her design were forced to watch her win. She was excluded from MK1 and the community barely noticed, but at least she was functional. Unlike the character who literally couldn't even rip off Kano correct. Jarek exists because Midway needed a Black Dragon representative in Mortal Kombat 4, and Kano wasn't available. Their solution was breathtakingly lazy. They took Kano's already programmed moveset and slapped a different face on it. IGN summarized his entire existence in one devastating sentence: Jarek is a poor man's Kano, simple as that. Every signature move was stolen intellectual property. The cannonball roll, the heart rip fatality, even the eye laser beam. That last one created an unintentional lore catastrophe that nobody at Midway seemed to notice or care about. Kano's eye laser makes sense because he has a cybernetic eye implant. Jarek has no cybernetic eye. He's fully organic. Nobody bothered explaining why a regular human was shooting lasers from his face. CBR called this out directly, saying, besides the fact that these didn't make sense since Jarek wasn't a cyborg, Jarek was painfully unoriginal. But here's where it gets weird. Jarek's legacy, the only reason anyone remembers him at all, has nothing to do with his gameplay. It's his legendarily terrible voice acting in Mortal Kombat 4. In Jax's ending, Jax holds Jarek over a cliff by the throat. What follows is gaming's most gloriously awful dramatic scene.
You can't grab me. You have to uphold the law. You have to arrest me. Wait, this is brutality. You can't do it.
Jax responds,
Wrong, Jarek. This is not a brutality. This is a fatality.
Then Jarek emits the most inhuman scream ever recorded in a fighting game, phonetically transcribed by fans. The community turned it into one of MK's most enduring memes. That scream became Jarek's entire identity. TV tropes also designated him the poster boy of uninspired fighters, who only exist to fill an arbitrary new character quota. He appeared in MK4, got killed off, and has never returned except as a punchline in worst character discussions. At least Jarek was meant to be a real fighter. The next character wasn't even trying to hide that he was a joke, he just forgot to be funny. Mocap debuted as a secret unlockable character in Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, a man literally wearing a motion capture suit covered in tracking balls. He was created as a tribute to Carlos Pacina, who performed mocap for Raiden. The concept could have worked as a fun Easter egg or a clever meta joke. It absolutely did not work. The problem was comprehensive and total. Mocap had no unique fighting styles, no weapon, and no finishing moves in Deadly Alliance. He borrowed everything from other characters. He had no story beyond some dude with martial arts knowledge who could inexplicably throw fireballs and teleport. He wasn't funny enough to work as comedy, and he wasn't developed enough to work as a legitimate fighter. Watch Mojo ranked him among the worst MK characters ever, noting that as a joke, Mocap is not particularly funny. As a legitimate fighter, Mocap is shallow and underdeveloped. Combine those two, and the result is a character who has no reason to exist. Here's what made it worse. Community frustration targeted the wasted roster slot specifically. In Deadly Alliance, unlocking secret characters required significant effort grinding through the crypt. Players who spent hours unlocking content expected hidden gems like Noob Saibot or Ermac. Instead, they found a man in a ball-covered leotard doing borrowed moves. Nerd Bacon Reviews delivered the perfect eulogy, asking why would he wear his motion capture gear out and about? Doesn't he have any clue how ridiculous he looks walking around in a suit full of light bulbs? The comparison to successful joke characters makes Mocap's failure even more painful. Dan Hibiki in Street Fighter parodies the genre with genuine charm charm and personality. Makujin in Tekken has a clear training dummy concept and randomized movesets that create interesting gameplay variants. Mocap offered nothing. No humor hook, no gameplay innovation, no personality, no reason to exist beyond filling a character slot. He appeared in Armageddon because that game's entire gimmick required every character ever made, and he's never been seen since. Mocap exists only as a punchline in worst MK character discussions. A cautionary tale about what happens when you create a joke character without understanding what makes joke characters work, but at least Mocap was designed to be ridiculous. The next character was supposed to be taken seriously, but ended up breaking Mortal Kombat 11's entire competitive scene with one move. Shiva herself has been in Mortal Kombat since 1995, but her spot on this list is specifically earned by her MK11 Aftermath iteration in May 2020, and a single move that nearly destroyed the game's competitive credibility, the Dragon Drop Stomp. A Steam community user summarized the problem in 4 words that became a community mantra: full screen, aerial, unblockable, mix up. Let me break down why this move was so catastrophically broken. The Dragon Drop was unblockable, requiring a dodge instead of a block. It tracked your position automatically. It could be delayed anywhere between 1 and 30 frames, making dodge timing a pure guessing game. It could be aimed directionally in front of you, behind you, or directly on top of you. It had a 32% damage crushing blow, and the input was just down up, the simplest possible command in the game. Online lag made everything exponentially worse. One player documented that if the ping is above 68 milliseconds, a Shiva player can just infinitely stomp you over and over before you can even recover to backdash. An input registration bug during her airtime briefly registered backward inputs as forward, actively sabotaging your defense. The competitive community erupted in fury. PSN Profiles users reported that the credibility of Kombat League goes right out the window when you destroy the other player in the first match. Then they select Shiva and do nothing other than her stomp and fatal blow. A dedicated Twitter account called Scrub Quotes, but with MK11. Shiva stomps cataloged thousands of rage messages. Players were deliberately picking Shiva just to farm easy wins in ranked mode. The controversy peaked at the MK11 Pro Competition North American League, Week 2 in January 2021. Competitor Titanium Tigers reached top 8 playing Shiva with custom variations literally named "Why Did NRS Do This?" and Brain Off. NetherRealm disqualified him mid-match for the variation names, calling it a conduct violation. The community exploded. Kotaku, Event Hubs, and Reset Era all covered the story, with the consensus being damning. NRS programmed a broken move, then punished a player for pointing it out. NetherRealm eventually responded with nerfs across 2 patches. The May 13th, 2021 patch added 30 recovery frames on miss, narrowed the hitbox, fixed the variable delay, and reduced Shiva's health from 1000 to 950. The stomp went from game-breaking to borderline useless. Some felt NRAs overcorrect, but the damage to MK11's competitive reputation was already done after an entire year of stomp spam dominating online play. At least Shiva was an established character with a fanbase who got one broken move. The next character was a blatant ripoff who couldn't even steal properly. Cobra debuted in Mortal Kombat Deception in 2004 and represents the 3D era's character design philosophy at its absolute laziest. During development, his placeholder name was literally Ken Masters, not a codename inspired by Ken, just Ken Masters. When a German magazine received a beta copy of Deception, they published screenshots identifying the character as Ken, causing brief confusion about whether Street Fighter's poster boy was actually crossing over into Mortal Kombat. Spoiler alert, he wasn't. NetherRealm just forgot to change the name. The final product did absolutely nothing to escape the comparison. Blonde shoulder-length hair, white karate gi, fire-infused fists, chi blast projectile, teleport punch. Every single visual and mechanical element screamed bootleg Ken Masters. IGN described him as a Street Fighter character mixed with Johnny Lawrence from the Karate Kid. Screw Attack ranked him number 5 worst MK character ever, calling him a direct knockoff, only not being able to pull it off and turning him into a generic white guy. But here's what makes Cobra even worse than being a shameless ripoff. He's not even a good ripoff. Ken Masters is charismatic, has memorable quotes, iconic moves, and genuine personality. Cobra is just some some angry dude. His backstory was painfully generic. A New York martial artist who got addicted to fighting and started murdering innocent people, then got recruited by Cabal into a reformed Black Dragon. In a franchise populated by thunder gods, undead ninjas, and dimension-conquering emperors, Cobra's entire identity was guy who does karate and has anger issues. TV tropes captured the community split perfectly. He's either a subversion of the Shotaclone archetype or a blatant ripoff of Ken Masters, and one of the worst characters of the franchise. Community consensus overwhelmingly chose the second interpretation. Every poll, every forum discussion, every worst character list placed Cobra near the bottom for being derivative, generic, and unnecessary. Cobra appeared in Deception, and Armageddon then was effectively retired. MKX confirmed his death via a throwaway interaction between Kano and Aaron Black, revealing Aaron had killed him off-screen. Zero ceremony, zero fanfare, just gone. He briefly resurfaced in MK1 as one of 3 fighters beneath the Ghostface DLC mask designated the Enforcer, still doing his trademark flaming flip kick. Even in death, Cobra remained too generic to earn a proper send-off. At least Cobra was just boring and derivative. The next character actively broke her own game with terrible boss design and even worse storytelling, becoming the worst main villain in Mortal Kombat history. Mortal Kombat 11's main antagonist debuted in 2019 as the franchise's first female final boss, a titan with power over time and mother of elder gods Cetrion and Shinnok. She should have been terrifying. She should have been memorable. Instead, she's widely considered the worst villain in Mortal Kombat history. The Korean gaming Wiki Namu Wiki went so far as to call her the worst character in video game history. That's not hyperbole, that's documented community consensus. Her narrative problems were fundamental and unfixable. Kronika was introduced as a cosmic being who was there all along behind the scenes manipulating MK's entire timeline without any prior setup or foreshadowing across 30 years of storytelling. Test Your Might forum users identified the structural failure immediately. It's a bad idea to introduce a villain in a long-running story who was there all along without building them up first. It always feels contrived and it's almost never satisfying. Her motivation was maintaining cosmic balance between light and dark by resetting timelines, which was so vague that critics said she lacked a defined goal, and her scheme amounted to pure rage that someone lived a life she hadn't envisioned. But here's what made it worse. She had zero personal connection to the heroes. She never confronted them directly until the final fight, creating no dramatic tension whatsoever. Compare this to Shao Kahn's conquest-driven menace, Shang Tsung's devious cunning, or even Shinnok's personal vendetta against the Elder Gods. Kronika was a blank slate with cosmic powers. The villain's wiki states she's one of the least popular villains of the franchise, being regarded by the MK fandom as only existing so the developers had an excuse to reboot the series once again. The MK11 Aftermath DLC confirmed this perception when Shang Tsung effortlessly outplayed and manipulated her, reducing the supposed Supreme Titan to a pawn in his scheme. Her boss fight was mechanically atrocious and fundamentally unfair. Players could not throw her, could not use fatal blows, and many signature character moves simply didn't work. Combos were largely disabled because she would automatically teleport out after a set number of hits. Her ability kit included tracking orbs that froze you in time, healing spheres, and summoning duplicate fighters at 66% and 33% health thresholds. A Steam community discussion captured the universal frustration perfectly. If you have to break the game's mechanics to make the fight hard, you fucked up your job. On very hard difficulty, the fight was described as near impossible, with the common strategy being to literally spam 1 to 2 punch combos while walking forward. A joyless grind against a joyless character. Kronika failed as a villain narratively and mechanically, becoming a cautionary tale about introducing cosmic threats without proper build. But at least her failures were passive incompetence. The next character actively murdered fan favorites and became the most hated newcomer in modern Mortal Kombat. The chitin insectoid warrior first appeared in Mortal Kombat X in 2015 and returned in MK11 in 2019, earning a distinction no other MK newcomer holds. She has her own dedicated page on fandom's HateSync wiki. Event Hubs published an entire feature article titled How D'Vorah Became Mortal Kombat's Most Hated Character, despite being in just 2 games, comparing her killing of Melina to Brock Lesnar ending The Undertaker's WrestleMania streak, a shock that permanently enraged the fanbase. Her kill list reads like a war crimes tribunal against fan favorites. In MKX, she murdered Baraka by impaling him and ripping out his heart and brain. She killed Melina, one of the franchise's most popular characters with a massive passionate fanbase, by spewing flesh-eating insects into her mouth until her head was reduced to a bare skull. She backstabbed Kotal Khan and trap Johnny Cage. Then, MK11 escalated the carnage to an unforgivable level. D'Vorah fatally stabbed Hanzo Hasashi, Scorpion, arguably the MK's single most popular character, from behind, while he was having an emotional moment with his past self. Community fury was seismic and sustained. Forum users raged that Noob Saibo would have been far more narratively satisfying as the killer than a two-game newcomer. The D'Vorah kills everyone meme became the defining community joke of the modern MK era. A Mortal Kombat Online thread titled literally "Fuck D'Vorah" and her entire race expressed the community's sentiments without subtlety. Her third-person speech patterns, this one serves Melina no longer, added an irritating verbal tick to an already loathed character. An accidental YouTube dynamic deepened the meme culture even further. Because D'Vorah bleeds blue-teal blood, she was the only character whose fatality deaths wouldn't trigger YouTube's violent censorship. Content creators specifically performed fatalities on her to avoid demonetization, inadvertently spawning an entire genre of killing D'Vorah content. Here's what separates D'Vorah from pure design failures, like the characters we've covered so far. The hatred is complex and layered. In MT11, she was one of the absolute worst characters competitively. Slow normals, inconsistent hitboxes, almost no mix-ups. She landed near the bottom of every tier list and became the least played character online. Yet some fans genuinely respect her as a villain. They argue the hatred itself proves she's an effective antagonist. She generates real emotional responses in a genre where most villains are interchangeable. This paradox, despised by the majority, but grudgingly respected by a minority, makes her hatred uniquely complicated. But that minority remains very small, and the majority remains very loud. D'Vorah earned her hatred through systematic destruction of beloved legacy characters, combined with terrible gameplay balance. She's a monument to how not to introduce a newcomer villain into an established franchise. Kill one fan favorite, and you generate heat. Kill three, and you generate permanent community resentment. But even D'Vorah's concentrated two-game reign of terror can't compete with the character who's been universally despised for over 20 years. The character so hated that his own creators have spent 2 decades finding new ways to kill him. No character in fighting game history has been as comprehensively, systematically, and joyfully despised as Xu Hao. A Mongolian red dragon grappler with a cybernetic heart implant, he debuted in Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance in 2002 and has been dying ever since. WatchMojo ranked him #1 worst MK character ever. IGN called him the most universally disliked Mortal Kombat character of all time. Community forums across Reddit, GameFAQs, TRMK, Test Your Might, and MK Online have placed him at or near the bottom of every poll for over 2 decades. Fans have described him as the Jar Jar Binks of Mortal Kombat, a comparison that if anything undersells the contempt. His design problems are total and irredeemable. Originally codenamed Kublai Khan during development, Xu Hao was meant to be Jax's rival within the Red Dragon faction. The result was a generic military brawler with no distinctive MK flair, a boring wrestling sumo moveset, and a personality void where charisma should exist. His special moves, Thunderclap, Cyrus Stomp, Crystal Laser, were functional but completely forgettable. One community member called him a ripoff of a ripoff, a Kano clone based on Jarek, who was already a Kano clone. In a franchise defined by spectacle and excess, Xu Hao was aggressively mundane. But here's what elevates Xu Hao from merely bad to legendarily despised. His own creators openly hate him. Ed Boon tweeted in June 2009, "I don't hate any MK characters, but I was never a big fan of Xu Hao. Don't expect to see him return anytime soon." A Game Informer article confirmed that Xu Hao and Draman were Boon's least favorite characters. But the deepest hatred came from designer John Vogel, who declared Xu Hao's death in Jax's Deadly Alliance ending canon, specifically because he wanted to get rid of the character permanently. When Armageddon forced every character back onto the roster, Vogel included Xu Hao, much to his dismay, and wrote an ending where Xu Hao simply dies and becomes an empty demon. A hidden backwards audio message in MK Deception asks, "Will Xu Hao return from the dead?" Probably not. The MK franchise has turned killing Xu Hao into a recurring celebration. In MKX Comic Issue 1, he was the first major character killed. Scorpion speared his cybernetic heart, then punched through his face with a hellfire-covered fist on page 12 of the very first issue. Fans noted the poetic justice. Ed Boon's favorite character murdering his least favorite. In MK11, Aaron Black's default intro shows him carrying Xu Hao's severed head in a bag, which he casually drops on the ground. A background billboard advertises Xu Hao's watches. A cardboard cutout appears in the retrocade stage. Fujin mockingly calls calls Kano Shu Hao as an insult. Even a tower consumable fires Shu Hao's chest laser from off-screen. He's been reduced to a joke item. 23 years after his debut, Shu Hao remains the undisputed benchmark for character design failure in fighting games. He was the first character confirmed absent from MK9 and MKX. His name functions as shorthand for worst possible addition in any roster discussion. He transcended mere unpopularity to become a cultural institution within the MK community, a character whose hatred is so complete, so enduring, and so universally shared by fans and developers alike that he's achieved a perverse kind of immortality. Every new MK game finds a fresh way to humiliate him, and every fan cheers. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.